During the day, when the sun illuminates areas that contrast with each other, combining poor favelas and rich high-rises, and birds sit on the roofs of all the houses without dividing them into rich and poor, tweeting a young man moves along the street, called the second gathering place. Yuanhai City is a city of continuous contrasts, where an ordinary hospital is located in a very unusual area, which is mired in dullness and some poverty. In the department of the First Central Hospital in the First Department of Ophthalmology, a doctor with the surname Zhao examines the medical card of a patient, a dark-haired young boy named Jiang Yu. The young man has unusual and beautiful eyes, golden color like wheat spikelets in the sun, and he is very attractive and enjoys some attention both from girls and from some guys. The doctor looks up and begins to ask the young man about what is bothering him and about his symptoms, because he found something in his chart that he does not quite understand, because in practice he has not had such a thing yet. He asks Jiang Yu to describe his symptoms, and the guy, looking up at the doctor, says that when looking at an object, a red stripe appears, which is a kind of indicator of strength, life or death. The indicator above the doctor's head shows 18%, and since the young man does not know what this means, he awkwardly smiles and says that this is probably the age of the doctor. Hearing the guy, Dr. Zhao opens his eyes in surprise and rubs them and thinks to himself that the guy is incredibly strange and may have made the wrong department. Jiang Yu, in turn, awkwardly scratches his cheek, thinking that this is an indicator of mortality, and 18% is not so much. But the doctor looks very cheerful. Zhao takes out a pen and interrogates the patient, asking if he drank alcohol. The young man scratches his temple, looks at the wall and asks about the period of alcohol consumption that Dr. Zhao is talking about, and hearing these words, the man sighs heavily. Jiang Yu closes his eyes and shakes his head, apologizing to the doctor and saying that he was a little distracted. Zhao looks at the guy seriously and tells him that he should be more collected and serious, and not treat everything with levity, and especially his health. Zhao asks the young man to close his eyes and takes out a flashlight. Yu tilts his head back and opens them, and the doctor examines his eyes, which are very red due to bursting capillaries and eye pressure. After examining the eyes, Dr. Zhao says that the eyes look normal, and there is no serious damage, perhaps only increased pressure. Jiang Yu comes out of the ophthalmologist's office, and there is a lot of ripples in his eyes, because everything is red and a certain indicator weighs over each person. The young man goes and smiles, because earlier he was ill with conjunctivitis and now he is cured. Apparently, redness is an epiphany. But still, the red stripes still raise questions, and the guy hopes to find a useful use for them and generally understand what this is connected with. After leaving the hospital, a news banner catches Jiang Yu's eye, stating that in order to ensure the safety of the population, the Night Watch Department is going to open a new set of candidates to patrol the streets at night. The banner depicts 3 people, 2 guys and 1 girl, who are dressed in military uniforms. In the 99th year of the cataclysm, a place was finally created. Others continue to retreat, so everyone hopes that people will be able to win. Jiang Yu decides to take a little walk around the city and look around before returning home. The young man's shoelace is untied, so he sits down to tie it, but then he freezes with fear, because people disappear like dust and everything turns green. The guy does not move, because right next to him he hears strange hissing voices discussing what they will eat. Yu sweats and tries to rise carefully so as not to attract too much attention to himself. He sees that someone is rushing at him, but he dodges and they lose interest in him. Finally standing up and straightening up, the guy examines the area around him. He sees a lot of monsters around him, as well as those who attack them. Red indicators also hang over all creatures, but the biggest indicator is at the huge green sphere, because the number there reaches unthinkable numbers, namely 99,999. Yu understands that there are huge problems where he is, which means he can start to panic. Jiang Yu examines the area and sees a lot of new and old skyscrapers, which are very dilapidated, as in his world. But they are all empty and dark, and green lights circle around them like jellyfish. Something happens, and he finds himself in his reality, standing on a pedestrian crossing. He is surrounded by a lot of people who communicate with each other, discussing sugar pumpkin, lateness, special offers, as well as some old people who walk through the road, worries about them. Jiang Yu is standing in the middle of the road, still unconscious, and a little girl asks her mother why the young man is so strange and stands like an idol, not moving from his place and not even blinking. In the 99th year of the cataclysm, the night patrol unit remains a reliable support for the entire civilian population. Their world is getting better, and the cities are safer as it seems to everyone. Some strange merchant approaches one of the pedestrians and asks him if he wants to buy something from him. The merchant has 50,000 bottles and he will give them all for 5,000. Recovering, Yu walks down the street and thinks about what happened to him just a few minutes ago. The guy thinks about whether their city is safe or whether it's all a carefully thought out lie on the part of the government so that no one suspects anything. A strange merchant approaches Jiang Yu from behind and puts his hand on the guy's shoulder and asks him if he wants to buy medicines from him that are not inferior to the official ones. The guy rolls his eyes, starts picking his nose and asks how it is possible to sell drugs underground when the city is full of monsters. Does this charlatan imagine himself to be a god, although he is an ordinary seller? The man says that he is not God at all, but he has everything necessary for life. Jiang Yu asks if it's free. And hearing this, the old man turns around with a huff and leaves, muttering that if you don't want to buy goods from him, then you don't need to, and there are no monsters in this part of the city at all. Yu catches up with the seller and says that all his words were just a joke. In fact, he wants to buy divine oil. When the day turns to evening, the young man gets on the bus in order to come to the house. He closes his eyes and thinks that the bottle of divine oil he bought costs as much as 3,000 and it is very expensive. Let the seller not blame him if he suddenly decides to denounce him to the police for fraud. The street outside the window seems ordinary to the guy and he resets his morning behavior for fatigue. The bus pulls up to the stop on South Street and asks everyone to prepare for the exit in advance. The hairs on the back of Jiang Yu's neck stand on end, because he is again overcome by the feeling that he experienced during the day when he got into another world. He looks out the window and sees that everything is immersed in green, and there is not a soul around him. The guy blinks and turns his head and everything comes back to normal. He's still on a regular bus and there are a lot of different people around him. His heart is shaking, because it happened again, and he could not have expected it in any way. He exhales and tries to calm down. Yu decides to look around on the way home. Jiang Yu gets off at his bus stop. He does not live in an area like Yuanhai, but at dusk, not such a favorable and prosperous place. Twilight lives up to its name. It's dark, gray and empty. After a long day, Yu, who entered the apartment, decided to take a shower in order to wash off the dust and relax a little, because today was very oversaturated for him. He turns to the mirror and looks in shock at his torso, namely at his chest, where a hitherto unknown pattern flaunts. The young man touches the pattern and thinks that somewhere he has already seen this. Is it really because he was hit? That day he was in the library, where he was looking for a comic book he had left behind. He climbed between the shelves until a book with Euler circles and a number of other books fell on top of him, the fall of which was accompanied by green lightning. Emerging from the pile of memories, Yu feels a nagging pain in the chest area. Green tentacles begin to stretch across his body, and the guy's whole body began to burn with pain. To cool down a little, he takes a shower and rinses himself. The tentacles go away, and the pain recedes into the background. Looking in the mirror, he notices an indicator hanging above him, where a 100% value is indicated. He turns around and looks at his feet, where his shadow lives its life and disappears altogether. Realizing that his shadow has slipped away from him, he begins to panic, because the shadow is not visible. Panicking a little, he looks at the wall where he sees his shadow, and when he sees it, he exhales with relief. He starts laughing and says that he was scared and thought that his shadow had really disappeared, although too many strange things had happened that day, so he wouldn't even be surprised if the shadow was missing. Jiang Yu comes out of the bathroom and heads to the bedroom. He opens the door and stops in place, because his shadow is standing in front of him, grinning angrily and hunched over. The young man smiles nervously and says that now it will be extremely fun, because something amazing is coming. Yu bends over because his heart is painfully stabbed. He thinks that the good news is that his shadow has not completely disappeared, but the bad news is that his shadow is alive and looks terrifying. Jiang Yu is sitting in his bed with a shadow looming over him. He asks her to lift her left arm and right leg. The shadow does it, but absolutely not understanding why. Yu smiles strangely and says to arrange a public, and after a little thought, the shadow starts a wild dance, doing different steps. Jiang Yu feels like his head is buzzing and his heart is beating fast. A slight tachycardia begins. He does not understand where he got such a strange feeling. A blue light flies out of the guy's chest, which unwinds and shows the characteristics of his shadow. Shadow's name is also like Jiang Yu. She has special shadow glasses and abilities such as shadow bite and shadow pupil. The shadow of the guy exists only because of him. She has the same memories and power, can perform simple tasks coming from her person. But with all these characteristics, the shadow does not have self-consciousness, which means it is completely under the control of its owner. But perhaps in the future it will be possible to change this, and it will become independent. Jiang Yu goes to the shadow and pierces it with his hand, which passes through the shadow as if through a ghost. The guy concludes that if the shadow does not have consciousness, then it means that it does not have even minimal speech skills. He looks at her and asks if she has all his memories, and the shadow nods affirmatively, making it clear that he understands his master's speech perfectly. Seeing an affirmative nod, Jiang Yu goes to his desk and finds a piece of paper with a math assignment and shows it to Shadow, saying that she can solve it and help him. He just hands the pen to the shadow, and she takes it without any problems. Holds it, so Jiang Yu thinks that there is another essence in it that allows him to be tangible. After a short period of time, the shadow puts a leaf, a pen, and a pencil with a characteristic sound, letting its owner know that the solution of mathematical problems is over. Jiang Yu approaches and sees that nothing is written on the sheet, so he slaps Shadow. The guy begins to grumble that since there are his memories in the shadow, then she should solve equations of this format in no more than 2 minutes and unmistakably. Was such a simple task too difficult for his shadow? The young man decides to fix this and check some more possibilities of the shadow, and asks her to draw a horse. After hearing the task, the shadow grabs the pen with great enthusiasm, and looks at the guy, starting to actively move the brush. Jiang Yu, who is watching this, looks admiringly at the shadow and says that with her zeal, he will be able not only to paint pictures, but also to write books while earning good money on it. Drawing a shadow is much better than solving math tasks, so the young man decides to check out other talents. First of all, by calling the system panel, the young man learns what a shadow bite is. Shadow bite is an ability thanks to which he can take shadow points from others, as well as absorb other shadows, regardless of whether they are human or other, strengthen himself and his shadow in order not to yield to anyone. The absorption of shadows, according to the young man, is similar to the direct contact of a shadow coming from another object, so he decides to test his hypothesis practically. He goes to the corner in his room where the shadow falls and stretches his hand forward, touching the shadow, but this was not successful, and the guy grumbles that he needs a manual to study skills. The next technique is the pupil of the shadow, which explains the changes in his eyes that have occurred. The fact is that if Jiang Yu fully activates this technique, he will begin to more clearly see the dark side of the world opening up before him. The guy remembers that earlier he had already encountered the fact that he was thrown into another world with monsters, others, and some kind of madmen, and where everything is covered in green. He decides to try all the techniques again, but using a shadow. The young man turns to the shadow sitting at the table, who enthusiastically draws and asks her to stop. He asks her to take a lying position and do a few push-ups in order to see what will happen to the shadow. The shadow heard him and got up from his seat, but taking the emphasis lying down just disappeared, then sowed panic, because the shadow was gone. Jiang Yu stands in the middle of the room and starts shaking his head, looking around his lair in search of a shadow. He asks her to show up again, because they start to get nervous. After 15 seconds, the shadow appears, climbing out of one of the walls of the room, and the young man exhales angrily, asking the shadow why she ran away from him. Shadow takes a pen and a piece of paper and writes that she did not run away, but was just on the dark side, where she did push-ups for a better effect from training. After seeing the shadow's response, Jiang Yu concludes that, probably, the greatest result for the shadow is brought by those trainings that are held on the dark side of the world, and therefore the young man asks the shadow to continue his training as hard as he did. The shadow nods and dives into the floor, evaporating between the boards, leaving no hint that it was. After she disappeared, the young man sits down at his desk and begins to do his business. He takes a stylus and begins to draw and write something enthusiastically and attentively. Night gives way to day, the stars are replaced by the sun, which is at the zenith. The blue sky and singing birds give a soft and cozy atmosphere. Jiang Yu sleeps at his desk, drooling. He mumbles to himself with a smile something about his mother's friends, fitness trainers, about a classmate Xiaozhu. A guy talking in a dream notes that all girls are passionate, and they should be slower because he has not finished everything yet. Then a nasty alarm sound is heard all over the room, notifying the guy that it's time for him to get up. Jiang Yu reluctantly opens his eyes and tries to straighten his back, because he slept in a very uncomfortable position and everything went numb in him. In addition to the alarm clock, someone is actively knocking on the door and asking to open it quickly. The young man trudges to the door and opens it. Behind her is a cute little girl with pink hair and shorter than the guy. Her name is Lu Yaya and she has been Jiang Yu's lover since childhood. Although she looks cute and timid, in fact she is a very hot-tempered young person who is able to stand up for herself. There is also an indicator above the girl's head, which the young man immediately draws attention to, because he remembers that the number on the indicator was above 93%. He decides to reflect on what it is and what percentages are indicated, why the red stripe has become smaller. The guy approaches the calendar and looks at it. He immediately understands why the girl's blood indicator has decreased, because she has started menstruating. He lets her into the apartment and she walks in as if to her home, without looking up from her phone, goes into the hall. Jiang Yu asks her why she came to him so early, and the girl, huffing with displeasure, replies that he should hurry up and not ask unnecessary questions. Staring at the phone, she mentions their conversation on the phone yesterday, where the guy mentioned that he was busy talking about some business and a bunch of things that fell on him abruptly and she didn't understand anything at all, so she asks to explain everything. Jiang Yu, standing behind her, slams the door, which scares Lu Yaya and she jumps up. Grumbling, she scolds him, saying that if he does not want to show or tell, then there is no need to react so violently to her request. Yu looks shocked at the door he slammed, because the wall is covered with small cracks going straight to the ceiling. Yaya turns around and looks at him with wide open eyes, looking at him from head to toe and saying that he has become wider and as if he has been pumped up, because his protruding muscles are difficult to miss. The girl takes her head and waves it from side to side. She tells the guy that she knows him perfectly well, and he would rather die than start doing sports or any other physical activity. And besides, how did he grow such muscles overnight and get relief? Lu Yaya comes close to him and starts touching his forearm and asking him what he did last night that made his muscles so thick. Jiang Yu hides his eyes from the piercing gaze of a curious girl. Jiang Yu moves away from the girl a little and blushing says that he did a couple of exercises in the evening. In his thoughts, he thinks about the shadow and the fact that the result of her training is reflected on him and very quickly, because literally overnight he became much more athletic. Lu Yaya grabs his t-shirt and lifts it, pressing it to the guy's chest. She looks appraisingly at his torso and says that he is a terrible deceiver, because it is impossible to pump up such a perfect abs in just a few exercises and overnight. Lu Yaya blushes and says that she knows how her father conducted some business and it's not too late for the guy to stop and not step on a crooked path. But the young man stops her tirade and says that he is not doing anything illegal. The girl pretends to believe, but abruptly grabs the guy's hand and twists it behind his back. Yu does not understand what happened and asks her to let him go. Is she limping to use a deadly weapon against him? But Yaya does not listen to him. She takes out a bracelet and puts it on the guy. The bracelet is a device for determining the index of pollution, which are murders, foreign objects, and even insults. If all this is not eliminated in time, then accumulation threatens pronounced savagery, alienation from people. Jiang Yu thinks that his ability appeared because of the guidance that is located on his chest, and maybe he will be able to avoid the fact that the bracelet will detect it. Then some black goo from the young man's chest reacts to the bracelet and reaches for it, and Lu Yaya, in turn, is already holding a gun on his head. Seeing a firearm in the girl's hands, Jiang Yu concentrates, and the liquid evaporates, and the bracelet does not show any critical result when it is necessary to use a weapon. The guy exhales, because he wouldn't want the girl to shoot him and find out about everything, and fortunately, he managed to react in time and hide everything. The bracelet shows 10 and the girl puts the gun back on the safety. Yu scratches the back of her head and nervously shifts, saying that she was worried for nothing. But Yaya calmly replies that it wasn't Dad who taught not to be careful and always ready for any outcome. Jiang Yu translates the topic and with a smile told the young girl that he had recently made a couple of new drawings and invited her to look at them, and she, beaming, happily agrees. They spend a certain amount of time together, but soon Yaya leaves because she needs to go about her business. Due to a busy day, a tired Jiang Yu enters his room and falls on the bed. He exhales with relief because it was very close to being exposed by Lu Yaya, but fortunately, he managed to fool her, and she did not suspect anything. The young man opens the system log, where it is written that his shadow goes to the dark side of the world and continues training. The shadow bite skill is running, which means that you can look at the characteristics of the shadow and assess how much it has become stronger. A graph appears in the log that during training, the strength of the hands increased by as much as 2 points, and the shadow points also doubled thanks to shadow training. Jiang Yu realizes that his shadow has been training all night without a break, performing many sets of push-ups. She ran, boxed, pulled weights and a number of other training sets that were necessary to get relief. Jiang Yu sighs, stretching his hand forward and pointing it at the floor, seeing the shadow. He smiles and says that he has already experienced all the results of yesterday's training of the enhanced shadow. The young man folds his arms on his chest and declares that push-ups alone are not enough, so it is worth increasing the complexity of the activity. The shadow raises his fist and agrees with his master, and the guy in turn repeats the gesture after the shadow, telling her to take the emphasis lying down and make the bar. The shadow begins to follow the instructions of the guy. After thinking a little, the young man gets into a pretentious pose and asks the shadow to do a stand on one hand on the index finger, then take a mixed emphasis, as well as a handstand, and at the end again a lying emphasis. And once again the emphasis is lying down, and then asks to make the shadow look like it is raising a banner. Aroused, he shouts for the shadow to take a gun stance and increase the difficulty by crawling, sit in the shape of the letter L, lift his legs and pump his abs. The guy got too carried away. At this time, Lu Yaya is heading somewhere, thinking that the guy is really training and she has thought up too many things, so she can now be calm because everything is fine with the young man. A relaxed Yaya goes to read comics. Catholicism is already 99 years old, and now it's January 20th, and this is the first day since the shadow appeared. After shadow training, Jiang Yu does not experience any painful sensations, but at the same time he becomes stronger. Yu is completely satisfied with this arrangement, so he will be content with this. January 21st, 20 is the second day since the shadow appeared. Jiang Yu gave the shadow a lot more exercises and here is the result on the face. He should be able to take down Lu Yaya with one punch now, shouldn't he? Although this may not be enough, so you need to try harder, which is what the guy does. On this day, his uncle Lai, who works in the night watch, came to him, so Jiang Yu can't let him suspect anything. Uncle Lee is an adult male 35-40 years old with a sporty build, dark hair, and brown eyes. As a former member of the night watch, he does not have one arm, which he lost during one of the battles. Uncle Lai is getting old. He is left without a hand, so Jiang Yu thinks that he can now deal with three uncles Lai and Lu Yaya with just one blow, even though they are both very strong and serious opponents. On January 23rd, 20, Jiang Yu's mood drops. He abruptly gets out of bed, glares at the wall and raises his fist thinking that he and Shadow need to work harder. It is impossible to continue living like this, because in order to acquire abilities, he also needs to try, so he should train endurance. On January 24th, 20, Jiang Yu is just sitting on the phone and resting, playing games while his shadow is actively training and the guy really likes it, because he himself does not need to put a lot of effort, so he giggles happily. On January 25th, 20, Yu sits down at the computer and starts drawing while the shadow is having fun behind him, being active, doing sports, dancing and generally being next to his master. On January 26th, 20, the young man decides to work out himself, and therefore, having taken the emphasis lying down, he begins to do push-ups, but he only manages to do it 10 times, because his physical fitness leaves much to be desired, so he decides to try again. Jiang Yu opens the system log and looks thoughtfully at the characteristics of the shadow. He is puzzled by the fact that the shadow has a very slow speed of gaining shadow points and has accumulated 8 shadow points in total. Judging by the current progress, it will be very difficult to score 10 points for evolution, and maybe then she will be able to increase the growth of points if she goes into the dark world on her own. The young man stands at the place where his shadow appeared. He takes a breath and plunges through his floors. He opens his eyes and sees his own room, but much darker. Jiang Yu realizes that he is in a dark world that looks exactly like his room. The young man leaves the building exhaling, because he barely got out of the room. You can get to the dark side only after leaving the real world and only through a special passage formed by the shadow. In the dark world, everything is exactly like his world, right down to the signs on the shops. It's just that the world is much darker than in reality. It is empty and everything is gray in it. There is no shadow of the sun, clouds and birds. There are no sounds that make it clear that there is something alive here. The young man turns his head in search of a shadow and hears some rustling behind him. Turning around, he sees a huge creature with an open mouth rushing at him intending to attack. The guy jumps away from the shadow with a squeal and dodges his attacks, swearing in every possible way. As a result, he activates the skill, the pupil of the shadow. A sphere appears in the ground, into which he jumps and ends up in his room, hitting his coccyx painfully. He exhales and dusts himself off, muttering to himself that he was scared to death of what attacked him. The guy does not understand where this creature came from and why it attacked him at all. But fortunately, the exercises made him much more mobile, and the monster could not seriously harm him. At most, a couple of scratches and bruises. The guy, a little angry, grabs some piece of iron and furiously says that a certain stinker dared to block his entrance to the dark world and he can't leave it like that, so he intends to punch this creature. On January 28th, the young man fought for the first time with the entity that attacked him, but unfortunately, he lost. On January 29th, they had a rematch. He failed again, because he received a very powerful blow to the chest and almost broke bones. On January 30th, 3 bloody traces appeared on Jiang Yu's buttocks. Although it was not easy for the last few days, the guy still managed to restore 6% of the blood. On January 31st, the guy decided not to fight with anyone, so he decided to stay at home and recuperate a little. His buttocks are handled by Lu Yaya, who looks at him suspiciously and says that he has somehow fought a lot over the past few days. Jiang Yu pretentiously declares to the girl that she does not understand this, because, in his opinion, scars adorn men and make them much stronger. Hearing the guy's words, she slaps his ass with her hand, which is in ointment, and feeling the pain, the guy screams. Yaya says that if it hurts him, it means that very soon his body will get stronger and become stronger. Jiang Yu turns his head to the girl and notices that there is only a month left before their exam and what plans the girl has. She realizes that she forgot about the exam. During the years of the disaster, most of the industries became less popular, including the culture and art industries. And the people who occupy themselves with art have become the very bottom of society. No one cares about entertainment and holidays and other events anymore. At this time, the battles broadcast on television and in the city center come out on top, which occupy the first place in the hearts of people. To become a part of the Night Watch, candidates who have expressed a desire must pass the martial arts exam, which is established at the state level. If a candidate has successfully passed the exam, then his life changes dramatically for the better. Sitting in Jiang Yu's apartment, Lu Yaya treats his scratches on his hands and says that she has changed her mind about participating in the Night Watch exam. Yu looks at the girl in surprise, who, blushing, says that she sincerely wants to study music. The young man tells the girl that if she wants to study, then let her dare, but there is one problem, which is that her father may be against it. After all, her father, Uncle Lu, is a high-ranking man in the Night Watch, and his daughter Yaya is a comparatively second-generation official who flunked exams and became freelancers. Saddened, Lu Yaya sadly says that her father will not support her in any way, and will not even allow her to start somehow, so she asks Yu not to tell anyone about this, and in general the policy has changed. Now anyone can apply for the martial arts exam. Jiang Yu asks the girl about how she can betray her principles, because she can definitely easily pass this exam. Yaya says that the pressure on the Night Watch is constantly increasing, so almost everyone is taken there, and according to the girl, she will definitely pass it later. Yu understands what she is talking about. She has very strong abilities and a lot of different devices are used on the day of the exam. If there are pistols, then the guy will definitely fail everything. He sincerely hopes that he will not be sent to some correctional camp. The young man comes out of his thoughts and asks the girl about the possibility of using her detector. Lu Yaya asks why the guy needs a detector, because it is used exclusively for detecting others. If he runs into one of them, it's best to escape, or you should call the emergency service before he is killed by a special one. Jiang Yu doesn't know who the special one is, so he looks at the girl with a question in his eyes. The girl realized that she blurted out something superfluous, so she turns the topic back to the guy's sores and says that since she helped treat them, she can go home. Yu clears his throat and says that the Yaya family knows a lot about the others and about all the details of their existence. The girl turns to the guy summarizing his interest by saying that since he is so much interested in the special ones, he still plans to take the exam. Jiang Yu laughs awkwardly and notes that she herself said that they must pass the martial arts exam this year, only if he had some outstanding abilities. Yu says that he is interested in this because he plans to just draw a few more comics about other and special ones. And when she hears this, she moves close to the guy and asks him to tell her more about his comics. Yu sighs and tells the story, according to which, a skinny guy named Abin, who was constantly bullied on campus, but he did not hold a grudge against them as he had a kind heart. Thanks to a kind teacher and aunt, he was chosen by the Night Watch unit to participate in the Super Soldier project. Abin possessed amazing willpower. He was transformed beyond recognition by receiving an injection of a super soldier, and became a powerful captain. The division of the Night Watch did not plan to send the young man to the battlefield, sending him to various kinds of events so that he would get acquainted with people from high society. And it was like that until powerful others invaded the city. The couple spent the whole night discussing the plot. The girl invites the guy to her apartment. Jiang Yu's house is on the same floor as Lu Yaya's apartment. They go into the girl's room, where she asks to wait for the guy while she goes to dad's room. The girl's room is very nice and cozy. It is furnished in pink and beige tones. There are a lot of toys and various posters that adorn the wall. Yu's attention is attracted by a book called Fateful Emptiness, which lies on the girl's bed. He takes the book and opens it, reading the annotation, which states that this is a comic about the love of a brother and sister. The young man giggles funny and asks his girlfriend if she really likes works of this nature, and the embarrassed girl snatches the book and begins to deny, saying that this is not her book at all, but her friend's book and she has not read it. Yaya comes to the door and leaves her room, telling the guy to sit still and not to dig, not to touch her things. Jiang Yu smiles and says that she can go and not worry, but in his mind he thinks that his girlfriend is still the same. Does not know how to defend herself from jokes at all. Since childhood, she really liked music. Previously, she constantly pestered him to listen to music with her, although the guy does not really like this business. The young man turns on the music and plunges into memories. As a child, they were very close. The guy often helped the girl carry weights. They played together, and he protected her, listened to music, and just spent a lot of time together. Relaxing to the sound of music, Yu dozed off a little and woke up because Lu Yaya came up to him asking him when he started liking music. In the girl's hands is a device that looks like virtual reality glasses, which the guy puts on himself. Wearing glasses, he falls into a space with a lot of eyes. The young man is surprised because he is in Shenzhou in the virtual universe, and he was very impressed. Shenzhou is an unexplored space that is full of uncertainty, and is considered the primary source of the cataclysm. Others appeared here. They committed brutal murders, destroyed and gradually absorbed the world. Jiang Yu turns his head and notices several monsters that are very similar to those that were in the hospital. Between the world where the young man lives and the world of Shenzhou, there is a space that is called the Dark World, displaying a projection of the real world. As soon as the space was opened, the monsters immediately entered the world through the Dark One. And even though now the Night Watch continues to monitor the gaps, sometimes others still get into the real world. The layer of shadows is reset every 3 months, redisplaying the current picture of the world, and just in this period, others penetrate into their world. However, given that the layer of shadows significantly weakens the protection of the world, it is better for people with a rank below 4th not to go out and join the battle. The visibility range of the shadow layer is 3-5 meters, but with the attraction of human strength, the field of view expands. There are a lot of different kinds of pollution in the shadow layer. If people stay in it for a long period of time, it is quite possible that a person can become different. There may also be impurities in the shadow layer, which the guy does not feel much, even though he came to the dark world earlier. A huge monster 3-4 meters tall appears behind Jiang Yu and intends to attack the guy, swinging. To cope with monsters, you need to be able to fully control your powers, and there is a chance to become special. A special person, that is, an absolutely white man without a face, is shown in front of the young man. Yu considers the special one and enthusiastically says that if he succeeds in passing the exam successfully, then he can also become special and cool. But at the same time, if you think about it, then a special one is another with the body of a person who controls his power, but at the same time dies because of it. Special people are constantly struggling with pollution and alienation, but after death there is a high probability of becoming different. When the special ones realize that death is coming for them soon, they try their best to use up the remnants of their strength. Jiang Yu rips off his virtual reality glasses and rubs his eyes, and Lu Yaya asks how he is. The young man says that everything is fine, but it was too much information. He needs time to digest it and realize everything. He asks the girl to massage him, stretch him. At first Lu Yaya refused, but the guy is savvy, so he promises the girl to draw 3 original paintings. According to the content, she can decide for herself what she wants to see. The Ayao immediately agrees. The young lady goes behind the guy and puts her hands on his neck, starting to knead and ask why his muscles are so clogged. The guy grunts and says that he is constantly training, so his neck is numb and his muscles are clogged. The girl asks if he has a press, and the young man, proudly raising his head, allows him to touch it, which she quickly uses, lifting the t-shirt and touching the torso. At the moment when the girl runs her palms over the guy's torso, Uncle Lu, her father, comes into her room, who is extremely angry at such a sight. The 3 of them go down to the first floor, to the kitchen, where they sit down at the table and start eating. Lu's father chews food with a murderous look and thereby scares the guy, but Lu Yaya tries to soften his father and says that dad misunderstood everything. The man raises one eyebrow and says that he believes his eyes and what he saw is very eloquent. Yaya realizes that he can't get out of it and therefore asks Jong Yu to say something. Clearing his throat, the guy says that Uncle Lu misunderstood everything and as punishment for his behavior, the guy promises to drink 3 glasses. Uncle Lu is even more angry because if a guy decided to drink something as punishment, then he is really guilty and too bold, so the man is looking for his knife and the guy runs away, shouting that everything is not as the man thinks. Jong Yu and Lu Yaya are childhood friends, but their characters are fundamentally different. Yu is a bully boy, frisky, cheerful and active, while Lu Yaya is a diligent daughter, a modest and well-mannered girl. Jong Yu doesn't know how it happened that little Yaya liked to play with him, such a hyperactive kid since childhood. At some point, the boy asked the girl to stay away from him, but then little Yaya refused, saying that she was not afraid of him. Maybe her decision was made because he helped her once. On that day, she was surrounded by boys and bullied her, but Jong Yu, who was passing by, stood up for her, entering into a mini brawl with them and defending the girl. In addition, the girl was definitely attracted by his bravery and unearthly beauty. The little girl accompanied him even when he pretended to be a tramp and collected money, and when he received punches for it, the girl did not. She was cherished. Emerging from the pile of memories, the young man finds himself and Yaya standing in front of Uncle Lu. Uncle Lu never let his daughter get too close to the guy, because he was constantly wary of him. The man looks seriously at the guys and lights a cigarette, taking out a lighter. Seeing a cigarette in his hands, the daughter came up to him and snatched the cigarette out of his hands and he didn't say anything to her. Lu turns to the guy and asks what they were both doing before he went into his daughter's room. And the guy tells him that they were just looking at information about others and special ones. Hearing such an answer, the uncle smiled sweetly and calmed down. Lu folded his arms on his chest and asked the guy if he knew why the government would not allow students to learn about all this in advance. That is, about the other, special and dark world. Yu says that he doesn't quite understand, and the man begins to explain. The bottom line is that everyone has different hearts. In some, evil begins to prevail over kindness. Despair can attract people from Shenju. And not everyone should know about certain things. Not everyone has the strength to withstand all this, and if suddenly a gap forms in the heart, then another can penetrate it at any moment. It is for this reason that various tests are conducted before the exam, and only people with appropriate physical training can come into contact with the world of others. But in this world it is extremely dangerous and difficult to survive. It's a pity that even with the current medical abilities, people still get out of control and go crazy. After listening to the girl's father, Jong Yu says that he understands all the concerns perfectly, but he can't miss the martial arts exam this year. Besides, he's figured it out a long time ago, so there's not much to worry about. Then the phone rings in the room, and Uncle Lu answers the call, where someone shouts to him on the other side that they need him, because the mission is urgent and touches the shadow layer, and the man has moved out. But finally, he turns to Jong Yu and asks the guy not to upset him, and then he will take him to the night watch unit. The young man, putting his hand on his heart, asks the man not to worry, because he does not plan to do anything like that with his daughter Lu Yaya. The girl spits out the water and grabs the guy by the cheek, saying that they have never done anything like this before. He said that on purpose. The next day, the streets of the city are teeming with a lot of people because it's a holiday. Everyone walks, communicates and buys gifts to each other, but Jong Yu spent this time searching for information, but eventually found some basic knowledge that is practically inapplicable in practice. Judging by Uncle Lu's reaction, certain materials will be hidden, and the guy will not see them anymore. The young man decides to go to the store and buy groceries. Then Lu Yaya calls him and asks him to buy more milk and eggs, but after she hesitated and asked him to forget everything, and the guy realized that she needed pads, but she was too shy to ask and disconnected. Jong Yu bought everything he needed and headed home. There is only a month left before graduation. Now the effect of shadow training is gradually weakening. It seems that shadow training alone is not enough and it is necessary to add real ones. And besides, propaganda about the fight against others has intensified recently, and a lot more people have signed up for the martial arts exam this year than ever before. The guy raises his head to the sky and looks at how the clouds have covered him. He feels like something terrifying is about to descend. He shakes his head from side to side in order to relax a little, because he has thought too much and is lost in his thoughts. Jong Yu decides to stretch out, so he turns into a narrow alley, from where he plunges into a dark world. Having plunged in, he hears some rustling and gets into a fighting stance, and a guy with 11% and terrible wounds comes around the corner. His eyes seem to be swollen. Yu tries to have a dialogue with him, asking if they are from the same building and what he forgot in the dark world. But the guy does not hear Jiang Yu and falls as if dead. Behind the fallen man, the young man notices the shrinking and crying children over whom hangs the very essence that did not allow Yu to fully immerse himself in the dark world for the first time. Earlier, the fallen guy with gray hair, purple expressive eyes and in a special uniform was patrolling the area, which is why he was terribly tired. Lately, more and more work has been falling on the night watch. There is so much of it that they can barely cope. When this guy was a civilian, he thought that work in the patrol was in high esteem. But in the end he works overtime all the time and at very dangerous points. Stretching his neck, he says that if he had known earlier about such a workload, he would not have taken exams and joined the ranks of the patrol. The guy hears children's screams asking for help because they are being pulled by another who decided to drag the children into the dark world. It's terrible because the other has sneaked into their world to harm. The guy has never seen people dragged to the dark side. The man broke into a run to help the children. He grabbed them by the palms, but could not pull them out, and the three of them were pulled. On the other side, the children, who did not understand anything, began to cry even more because they did not know where they seemed and where their parents were. The guy is angry. He says that everything is over for him because he was also dragged out. He is already a civilian because he has worked his shift and this should not have happened. He doesn't even have a weapon with him. Is he really going to meet his death in this place? The entity tries to attack the kids, but the guy covers them with himself and reflects the attack. The guy turns his head and realizes that the gap has disappeared and they will not be able to return back. There are others everywhere who can attack absolutely at any moment, and besides, the guy has been communicating with citizens almost all the time and has already lost all his fighting skills. But the worst thing is that in such a dangerous place there are helpless children with him who can't do anything and are terribly scared. The only thing a man can do is send a distress signal and wait for rescue. He approaches the children and gives them his sauce bracelet, telling them not to cry, and the bracelet will help temporarily resist the local pollution. As soon as he comes up with something, he will immediately take them home safely. He understands that the bracelet will not help him much, so he gave it to the children. Everything that concerns their survival depends on the will and favor of fate to them. Hearing the guy's words that he would take them home, the children calm down a little, believing him. The guy says that he just needs to deal with a small problem in the form of an entity and everything will end. When this young man was 18 years old, he passed the martial arts exam and entered the Faculty of Martial Arts at the University of the Department. From the very beginning, he worked hard, laying a solid foundation, waiting for when he would become a strong and full-fledged fighter. In his second year of study, he took first place in the exam for the battle with the others, but it was not enough. Unfortunately, in the world of others, diligence is far from its first place. Physical indicators have a much higher role. He did not believe in the fate that was in store for him, but no matter how hard he tried, he still could not overcome the barrier and step over his limit. In the end, all he had to do was switch from the martial arts faculty to the humanities, becoming an ordinary civilian employee of the night watch. He observes how the entity moves and notes that the form of a half-man moves on all fours. It seems that this creature has an average level. The girl rushes at him, but the guy hits her and smiles because he remembers the old days when he was at the combat faculty. But his joy does not last long because he is attacked and he crashes into the wall. He wipes the blood from his face, tried to dodge, but failed. His body turned out to be slower than his mind and he miscalculated a little. The entity attacks, intending to deliver a dozen blows, but he dodges and runs. The guy's body becomes heavier. It seems as if the body is pierced by numerous needles. He can no longer run, because this will not lead to a better outcome, which means that something must be done. He bandages his arm and swings to strike using the shadow power skill, blinding. The young man hits the essence and hits the ground. The guy is very ill. He spits blood because the pollution in his body is growing. Every time an entity uses its skills, the pollution increases and low-skilled people like him cannot reuse their abilities. Fortunately, since he became a civilian, he didn't use his abilities that much, so the pollution was at a very low level. The entity comes to his senses and furiously attacks the guy, hitting him in the stomach, from which the bleeding increases. The guy understands that the entity has adapted to his skills and they do not pose a threat. In total, the average level and, in theory, any student from the Faculty of Martial Arts can deal with the essence in a moment. But it's not easy for him, because he's already exhausted and doesn't know what to do. But at the same time, the guy understands that he can't win and he can't retreat either. The only thing in his power is to stall for time and wait for the other members of the Night Watch to arrive. The guy's wounds become much more serious. He dies. His fate is apparently like that of his relatives. When he was 15 years old, his whole family was killed by others and left him an orphan. It was for this reason that at 18 he decided to take a martial arts test. But at 20 he was expelled from the second year. At the age of 21, the young man entered the Night Watch unit as a civilian, and since then it has been as much as 4 years. This is his life. Of course, it may not seem the easiest, but for this world this is considered the norm. For 100 years of people's struggle with others, they have never lived in peace and tranquility, but sometimes even others retreat. However, once the clouds cover the sun, people no longer see hope, light. Death is the norm in their world. It follows literally everyone and leaves no one even for a second. But at the same time, before death, a man wants to do at least something. He gets to his feet and smiles painfully. The second round is coming. The guy growls and attacks the entity. He jumps on it and begins to inflict a lot of chaotic kicks and punches while bleeding. But despite this, he still attacks and hits, turning a blind eye to his serious injuries. He asks himself to hold out for a little while, because his eyes close and he loses consciousness. It's very hard for him to hold on and fight, so everything around him becomes blurry. You need to make more effort. But his body shakes like an aspen leaf. The entity hits the face, and the guy hits his head hard, breaking it. A bloody ocean is spreading under his head. He can't see anything, but he somehow smiles madly, thinking that he is very weak. Even with the help of special pills, he failed to win. There is no way he can win over such a mediocre entity that every student from the faculty could cope with. But he is an ordinary, useless person whose life is about to be interrupted in such a terrible way. He had a boring life, but it's still hard to say goodbye to her. He opens his eyes because he hears a man's voice asking what is going on. Initially, the man thinks that Jiang Yu is from the Night Watch, but he is too young for this, and his accent is not like a watchman, but like an ordinary civilian. He understands that Yu is an ordinary person, but it is impossible for someone like you to be on the other side, because none of the ordinary people can get into this place. Only special people can, but even those do not step here. Jiang Yu runs up to the guy and picks him up, asks how he is and takes him to a corner so that he lies down and Yu will sort out the problem himself. Jiang Yu smiles, and the man is still thinking about how he got here, because the entrance from the dark side is tightly controlled and a random person cannot get to this side, unless this guy is part of the mysterious forces that inhabit this side. The entity hits the guy, and the watchman looks at it and says that he is a weakling. Sush tries to attack the sentinel again, but Yu, who appeared on his way, slaps her, saying that he is his opponent and not a wounded guy. Yu takes out a bottle of premium soy sauce and threatens her. Jiang Yu breaks the bottle and makes a rose, which becomes his kind of weapon with which he strikes the essence. The enraged woman starts attacking the guy, but he only dodges and makes a face, saying that her attacks are useless because he has already figured out her scheme. He says that the monster is seriously injured, so the speed and strength leave much to be desired, so Jiang Yu has all the advantage. The lookout watching the fight changes his mind that the guy is weak and helpless. Obviously, there are no rules in this battle, and he inexplicably suppresses his opponent. Jiang Yu is angry and tells the entity that she kicked his ass a few days ago. Now it's his turn to punch and kill this abomination. Jiang Yu is thrown back against the wall again, and he realizes that it was careless of him to attack the same place. The guy is trying to come up with a plan of action. It is impossible for a monster to attack children and a wounded man. If Jiang Yu was alone, he could just escape from the dark side and return home to lick his wounds and recover a little. But in that case, everyone would die and it would be terrible. The monster has only 20% of blood left, and Yu is thinking about whether it is worth being afraid of. It is necessary to bring the matter to an end. The man turns to Yu and says that the entity has a serious injury in the right rib, so you need to attack there. The guy listens to the man's words and after making a couple of quick jerks, first attacks from the left side, and the monster begins to move away. Yu thinks that he is running away. When he saw where the entity was flying, he realized that she was heading to the children in order to make up for her blood loss. The entity flies very close to the children and opens its mouth right in front of the trembling children. But Jiang Yu shouts at her and asks her to stop, throwing a jar of energy at her. This allows him and the man to attack her, but the man is very weak, so after striking just one blow, he falls exhausted right in front of the entity, which, without wasting time, flies up to him and opens its mouth, intending to kill. Yu runs up from behind and grabs her by the neck, biting, from which the monster howls violently, and the embittered Jiang Yu calls him nothing else but just a boy who barks like a dog. The entity in its chest forms some kind of sphere and howls, but Yu, seeing this, raises his fist and hits many times, shouting that she should die and not interfere with their lives. After a couple of moments, the essence flies apart, exploding and flooding everything with blood, like rain. The guy is drenched in blood from head to toe. His hair is dyed in a red undertone and all his hair is disheveled. Jiang Yu looks at the children and the man, and realizing that they are fine, he smiles and says that he has finally taken revenge. But then everything swims before the guy's eyes and he settles on the floor, looking at the ground and breathing heavily. The whole city is on fire. Everything is on fire and smog, and a pile of corpses littered the roofs of houses and the road, like a blanket that lies on the bed. There is a terrible smell of burning and iron in the air. Everything is littered with ruin and nothing more. Jiang Yu wakes up, opening his eyes. He sees a lot of corpses around him. He tries to figure out where he is and examines the area. It turns out that he is at the gathering place, but it has changed very much and there is not a soul in it. The young man closes his eyes and shakes his head, but when he opens his eyes, he notices that the corpses have disappeared and he is surrounded by a dozen others who look at him as if they were a treat. They all scream and shout, and their paws reach out to the young man. They press on him, and he falls with them. The sun disappeared, and the dark side enveloped the world. The hope of all people was lost. Someone is dancing at a feast and rejoicing, and someone is screaming and writhing in pain, because death is breathing right in their face. Someone is silently fighting, dying, suffering, and all this is commonplace. Some people understand everything and realize the sadness of what is happening, but there are also those who do not understand what is happening. Then Yu hears someone's voice asking him to wake up and open his eyes. When he comes to himself, the guy sees a man sitting opposite him and tries to bring him to himself. It turns out that everything was a nightmare and Yu understands this. The man asks how he feels, if everything is alright with him, and the young man says that everything is fine and he is alive. Jiang Yu looks at the shreds of the torn essence and realizes that after killing another, his memories are cut off and he does not remember anything. Jiang Yu puts his finger on the head of the murdered other and uses the shadow pupil skill, and the man begins to worry even more about the guy, because he is silent and does not move again. Yu looks at him and realizes that he is in an extremely serious condition. The man has lost a lot of blood and the indicator shows 10%, but he can still stand on his feet, which is very surprising. The bottom line is that there is a system standard of blood volume, where 70% of the blood volume is a slight injury, 50% of the blood volume is a moderate injury, 30% of the blood volume is a serious injury, 10% of the blood volume is a person on the verge of death before a catastrophe, and the percentage of survival from this kind injuries are only 28-37% out of 100%. If the volume of blood is only 5%, then in this case a person can barely speak and you can write a will. Both young men sit down by the wall in order to lean on it and rest their backs a little. The guy turns to Jiang Yu and asks if he is a member of the Night Watch, and Yu realizes that he did not recognize him, although they have been living in the same house for quite a long period of time. Jiang Yu understands that the guy sees poorly and therefore could not properly examine him and recognize him, so the guy says that he is not from the Night Watch and has never been in it. The man grunts and smiles kindly and says that this can't be. The other was very much a member, so he does not believe that Jiang Yu is not a member of the Night Watch. Yu does not understand what kind of communication they have, because he just saved this man, and he laughs. The man laughs and says that the people from the Night Watch are very strong. The man says that Jiang Yu is funny and very strong, and besides, it was so funny how Yu hit another with soy sauce. Very incredibly and very smart, and while he says this, he slaps the young man on the crying. Jiang Yu is worried about his opponent's so he asks how he feels, because he is in such a terrible state. But at the same time he laughs. The people from the Night Watch amaze him. A young man asks Jiang Yu what university he is from and what course to study, and the guy says that he is in the second year of Beidou University. Yu understands that it is probably for the best that he was not recognized, because he will not have to tell the whole truth about himself. The guy chuckles and says that it turns out that Yu is younger than him. He asks what specialty the guy is studying, humanitarian or martial arts, and Yu mentally asks him to stop asking such a huge number of questions. Having received no answer from Jiang Yu, the guy puts his fingers on his chin and says with a thoughtful look that most likely the guy is in martial arts, because he is too strong for the humanitarian direction. They sat in silence for a while, and the man asked Yu if he had a cigarette, but the guy said that the only thing he had were bikes, long narrow cookies, similar to Pokey. Yu takes out one cookie and breaks it, sharing it in half with his new acquaintance, who says that somehow it's not enough. Yu points his finger at a pack of cookies that are broken. Initially, he bought a lot, but during the battle all the cookies broke. But if he wants more, he can take it. They both fell silent again, lost in their thoughts. The man asks Jiang Yu if this was the first time he killed another one alone, and Yu says yes. The man sighs and says that he has always admired those who are at the Faculty of Martial Arts. They study martial arts and everything in this spirit, and it is very exciting. Unlike Jiang Yu, he has a lower qualification, and the attack power is much weaker. He considers himself extremely hopeless and unnecessary. Even foresight, which, it seemed, should increase combat effectiveness, does not save at all. Jiang Yu, after listening to the man, says that he should talk as little as possible in order to save energy about the arrival of help. A friend says that everything is fine and he just wanted to talk to someone. It is not every day that a civilian gets the opportunity to fight another, but in any case he is terribly weak, because he is just a civilian. Blood flows from his nose, and he wipes it, continuing to say that he could not even resist the wave of pollution. Jiang Yu asks if he regrets everything or not, since he himself chose the direction of the humanities, and besides, how could a civilian get to the dark side? The guy says he doesn't regret anything, because it was his choice. He is a civilian who goes to work every day, chats with girls, works in the night watch, and it's a great life for him. After all, he himself transferred to this specialty because he was simply kicked out of martial arts. It would seem that everything is fine with him, but in fact it is not so, because he does not like anything. He interrupts his speech with a cough, and Jiang Yu, calling him brother, asks him to calm down, otherwise it will be hard for him. Clearing his throat, the man says that he has long sent a signal for help and he thinks that rescuers will arrive soon. Yu says he feels relieved, so he will go home. The brother grabs Jiang Yu by the sleeve and asks him not to walk around, in case he stumbles upon another. Although he is good and strong, but his abilities are not yet enough to fight several others at once. He asks Yu to chat with him until the rescuers arrive, but the guy thinks he needs to get out, because he wants to rest, because he's pretty tired of all this chatter. Jiang Yu stays and sits down again next to his new acquaintance, who tells him about his youth. He tells Yu that when he goes to university again, he should take something to Director Zhu from the specialty Extraordinary Technologies. It can be said that his teachings did not bring much results, and even another of the first rank can be extremely strong. Jiang Yu laughs and says that maybe he should take a notebook, or he himself will tell these people everything later. The man turns his head and says that he carried everything for a very long time and wanted to find a person with whom he could just chat and relax. He lowers his head and says that he would like to visit Beidou Academy again, as in his youth, and he also asks Yu for a couple more sticks to chew, but then he abruptly changes his mind. They are sitting and then they hear some kind of trampling, which means that most likely the night watch has arrived. Jiang Yu says that this is wonderful and means that the man and the children will be helped, but it's time for him to go home. He will get home on his own and they wish him a happy journey. Yu thanks his new acquaintance and leaves. 3 members of the night watch run up to the unconscious body of a young man and children, transmitting by radio that they have found a member of the night watch and 2 children. One of the rescuers who arrived squats down in front of a civilian and starts checking vital signs. Jiang Yu is watching all of these from the shadows, and then he notices how the blood level of his named brother is rapidly starting to fall and rescuers are starting to panic, discussing that they should help him with their technology. Yu sees the patrollers kneeling and saluting their fallen comrade, and he himself tries to shout and somehow help, but he gets sucked in, and he finds himself in his own world. Jiang Yu opens his eyes and finds himself standing in the middle of a street filled with people who look at Yu in surprise as if he is crazy. He hears the announcements of one of the hosts of the night watch, who says that the special ones should remember not to give up even at the last minute of their lives. When they realize that the chances of survival are low, then they should approach taking a special pill with all care and caution. The risks after taking this pill are extremely high. The probability of death reaches 90%. After taking this drug, the chances of further life are significantly reduced. They should all remember all the fallen comrades, boldly move forward until all others are destroyed. Everyone should watch the sky and the earth, patrol day and night, think only about a happy future. They, mortals, have to observe inexplicable things, moreover, to resist them. After all, they are the night watch. Jiang Yu enters the elevator located in his apartment complex. All the clothes of the young man are covered in blood, and in this form he was walking down the street all this time, smelling of iron and with a dirty face. The guy is holding a bag from the store in his hands, and he himself is drooping and with his eyes lowered to the floor. All his thoughts are filled with that guy he called brother and who died of blood loss with a smile on his face. Although they had known each other only a little, but still his death was a kind of blow for him, because he was a good guy. He was constantly joking while chatting and 100% felt pain all over his body. And approaching death, it turns out that he just wanted to find someone to talk to and chat before the inevitability. No flowers, no applause, the man passed away quietly and calmly, just like an ordinary person and not a member of the night watch. But no matter how ordinary he was, you will never forget him. He is very grateful to him. Jiang Yu walks into his apartment and rubs his head, which hurts. He is tired as hell, so he plans to wash himself off in order to wash off the whole burden of this day, and go to bed, gaining a little strength. A young man looks in the mirror looking at himself. He walks with difficulty, but he still has half of the blood, and he thought that there was only 20% left. Yu again thinks about that guy on the other side. He had 10%, and the young man thinks that he could still be helped in some way. This situation made it clear that it is not enough to train only your body, because willpower is also very important. Then he hears a woman's voice asking about eggs. Lu Yaya was lying on the sofa in the guy's apartment, who had been waiting for him all this time. The girl looks at her friend with displeasure and says that he does not answer the phone. He has no one at home. Did he have to go for eggs all the way to the chicken coop, and not to the store? The guy turns his back to her to hide his bloody windbreaker and abrasions on his face, and awkwardly says that the new year is coming soon and therefore there are wild queues in all stores where you can stand for as much as half a day. Jiang Yu asks Yaya where she got the keys to his house. Lu Yaya gets up from the sofa and walks towards him, saying that he never cooks food himself. He never orders food either, so Uncle Lai will ask to take care of him. The girl comes close to Yu and he still does not turn around, and she asks what happened to him. Did he really fight with someone? But the guy does not answer her and says that it's late and it's time for her to go home. Otherwise Uncle Lu will misunderstand everything. Yao does not listen to him and grabs his forearm, demanding to turn around. But the guy tries in every way not to do this. But in the end the hood falls off his head and she sees the abrasions and blood on his clothes and anxiously asks how he suffered so much. Jiang Yu wants to leave and therefore says that he forgot to buy eggs, while Lu holds him by the windbreaker and demands to stay or at least answer him first. Yu makes up a story on the go, answers the girl and says that on the way home he was attacked and robbed. But then he caught up with that guy and beat him, so there's no need for Lu Yaya to feel sorry for him because of such a trifle. He continues and says that when the police arrived, it was very difficult to recognize the attacker because of the way he was beaten. He thinks she can't even imagine how good his reaction is. Uppercut left, then right, combined blows up and down. Yes, he is so cool that the mother of this robber does not recognize. While Yu was telling all this, Yaya did not even move, and her face did not express any emotion. But when the guy finished the story, she came up to him and touched his cheek. Yu realized that the girl would not believe in such a nonsense story. Lu Yaya pats Jiang Yu on the cheek and asks if he feels well and if he has any pain. A young man blushes because of such worries on the part of the girl and says that he is just exhausted and very much wants to sleep. After listening to the young man, the girl walks away from him and folding her arms on her chest seriously says that everyone needs to tell Uncle Lee about this because it's not good to fight with someone at night. Hearing these words, Jiang Yu runs up to the girl and grabs her by the palm, saying that this is not a fight at all, and he just stood up for himself and asks the girl to come back and not report it. But she says that she cannot be persuaded, because she is clearly sure that this is necessary. The guy gets tired and falls down, letting go of the girl's hand and saying that he is too weak and can't do anything else. Seeing his condition, Lu Yaya, frightened, asks how he is and if he is okay. She sits down on the floor next to the guy sitting on the floor and says that he needs to go to the hospital. Jiang Yu asks his girlfriend not to worry, there is everything necessary for recovery at home. And besides, the medicines are better than in any other hospital. Yu calls the girl Dr. Lu and smiles asking her to patch him up. But the girl looks at him with a serious and withering look, saying that she will not treat him. Lu Yaya changes his mind and takes up the treatment of the young man. But she did not give him medicine at all, but wrapped bandages around him like a mummy, which angered the guy, because he just asked to get him drunk with ordinary medicines, and not bandages. While Yu rebelled, Lu Yaya hits him with her small palm on the hand, angrily asking if he would. It's also so bad to act by entering into battles, and Yu, having received an unpleasant painful blow, says that this will not happen again in the future. Baby Yaya asks Jiang Yu to swear, but he refuses and does not do it. The girl leans on the guy in order to beat him, but the young man puts his palm forward as a block and says that he is a guy and his love for fights is inherent in nature. He, as a man, cannot live without fights and scars. Angry, Yaya asks the guy to repeat his words again, but Yu hesitantly changes his words and says that he will just watch, but is not going to get into fights. Hearing these words, Lu climbs off him and says that she believed him and goes home. Yu pretends to be surprised that the girl is leaving, so he offers her to stay the night with him, because he has a large and comfortable bed on which they both can easily fit. Lu just makes a face and leaves, slamming the door loudly. Yu lies on the sofa and puts his hand behind his head thinking about his brother, remembering his words, that he asks to pass some message to Beta. Then Yu abruptly sits down and realizes that his brother didn't even tell him his name, and this is a problem. Left alone with himself, Yu opens the system log, where there is already an entry about the other that he killed. His name is Yuling and he occupies the middle position of the First Order. He belongs to the lower alien species of the Abyss, belonging to the shadowy and dangerous species. The shadow of this order can use superpowers, and if a person wants to engage in battle with her, then he should be careful, because she most often attacks her victim from the back, moving very quickly. Although it seems easy based on their description, but it is not, as indicated by a note in the magazine, which states that this enemy is very complex. The minimum price of murder, so to speak, is a broken arm. After defeating these others, you can get a new skill, Shadow Attack, which you got by increasing the number of his shadow spots. Yu carefully reads everything about Yuling and reads out information that this other can kill other aliens the weakest than himself. The young man understands that after defeating her, he will stroke part of her shadow and post information about her in a magazine. He opens the help and reads about a new acquired skill, in which he can attack and be invisible for a certain amount of time. He has to launch an attack in the shadows without visibility for others, and through this, he is able to cause huge damage. The young man decides not to read further, but to understand and practice how the newly acquired skill works. He gets up from the sofa and begins to stretch his muscles, making light rotations with his pelvis, swings with his hands, and rotations with his knees. The guy becomes stoic, closes his eyes, and launches the shadow attack skill. He exhales. But nothing works out for him, which makes him angry and stomps his foot with displeasure. Is the system making fun of him? He begins to reflect and realizes that perhaps the skill has not yet been activated by him. It is probably worth activating it first. He jumps on the sofa and throws back his head and sighs aloud, saying that he will deal with all these later. Yu opens the system log and reads his characteristics, where it says that he belongs to the Shadow family and has reached level 14. Possessing 3 skills. He is also called the Stalker who killed Yuling and the only killer who combed his hair in the shadows. He will be like a fish in the form, living in the shade and swimming in it. The guy looks at his avatar and tries to figure out what's wrong with him, and how to pump even harder by activating a new skill. The system indicates that his shadow has increased in strength, and when it is detected, he can manipulate it. The shadow in combination with the young man himself has high strength, but first it must be brought into a special form. Yu realizes that he has acquired another new skill, Shadow Form. He needs to actively engage in sports using this skill, and then he will have incredible results. His breathing will improve and become cleaner and more restrained. This skill can be perfectly integrated into working with shadows, because it will allow him to be unnoticed, and he has an indirect death. That is, he can only be killed by decapitation. Yu's eyes light up when reading all this, and he is especially pleased with the point that he is practically immortal. That is, he does not have a lethal part. Even with decapitation, a significant amount of blood will be deducted from him at most. But this will not lead to death. He decides to test this skill, and that is why he calls a shadow, which begins to repeat after him, and one is touched with his index fingers. The shadow begins to envelop the guy from the finger of his hand to his feet, and he becomes his shadow. The guy gets a new ability by merging with the shadow. He is surprised by the very interesting current form. Breathing air into his full chest, he takes off with lightning speed in a jump. Like lightning, the young man begins to rush around the room so that ordinary eyes will not be able to track his movements. Carrying all the interior items, he admires the extraordinary speed that he has acquired. Grabbing the base of the bed, he lifts it almost to the ceiling with a light movement of his hand. The guy has also become very strong. Taking a hammer of 100 kilograms, he hits himself right on the head, but does not receive any damage, because he has excellent protection. Putting his hands on his hips, he begins to laugh because he has become just an invincible being. Suddenly, a cry was heard from afar. Someone from below was shouting for the young man to calm down and stop making noise. The shadow begins to slowly dissipate and the usual appearance of the main character appears before us. The young man says that, although it does not catch the eye, but at the same time the shape of the shadow is just something and justifies itself very well. Typing something on the screen of the panel that appeared in front of him, the young man sees that the system gives him the opportunity to open something new, namely the stalker mode. Having discovered this ability, the hero learns that he now has part of the abilities of this skill, but officially, full possession of it has not yet been obtained. After full acquisition, no one else will have this ability, but there are risks. The young man faces a difficult choice. The system warns that sometimes risks can turn into an opportunity. He, holding his chin, begins to ponder whether he should try or not. He analyzes the phrases of the system and notices that she highlighted the font in red about the risk, so it would be more logical to refuse. However, risks can turn into opportunities. The hero clicks on the word yes and agrees to the terms of the system. Suddenly, a black cloud begins to seep out of the screen. This leads the hero into a terrifying shock. He begins to shout that he has not yet fully decided on his choice. However, it was already too late. A black cloud, like ribbons, wrapped around the body of the main character and rolled him into a cocoon. The bottle from the pharmacy, along with the bandages, fell to the floor with a crash. Suddenly, the hero stamped on the floor. His skin was all black with white gaps, like cracks. The system has notified that if the killer does not take risks, he will die. She also called the hero an excellent killer. The system also displayed 3 notes. One of them says that any auxiliary items will not bring any effect. The following said that a killer from the shadows should behave secretly, and the higher the reputation, the more fruitful the results would be. The third was that there was no escape. The guy looks at his hand in surprise and says that damage is inflicted even to God. Black magic hovers around his body, covered with blue light at the edges. The system notifies him that after activating the shadow form, his killing ability will be greatly increased, and the need for a certain balance of blood volume will be reduced. He reads, then squeezes his hand. Black spots reach his face, one of his eyes glows, a certain current emanates from him. The system explains to him how decapitation takes place when the volume of the victim's blood reaches a certain limit. The strip above her head will turn scarlet. He will be able to observe the gradual death of the victim. He sees a red ball on the pig, which glows and emits rays of energy. The guy easily cuts the pig into 2 equal parts with just his hand. The system says that when attacking, he can activate the decapitation skill, which depends on the blood level, strength, abilities, and other factors of both sides. He looks at the screen for a long time and thinks. He remembers the monster with red eyes and thinks, maybe this is the skill activated the last time he killed the other. He keeps thinking and keeps talking out loud about absolute damage and decapitation. It's already night outside. The guy grins at first, and then says that it looks like he is invincible. He pulls his hand up with his index finger and laughs happily. There is a crescent moon on the street. Suddenly remembering, he begins to untie the bandages on his body. He feels his body as if looking for something, then says it's strange. He wonders if he didn't have wounds. He says that everything seems to have passed. He pokes himself in the shoulder muscles and says that even the deepest wound has disappeared. He wonders why the drugs don't work so fast. He pulls out his hand and catches a shadow next to his scar with his index finger and thumb from the bottom of his stomach. He picks up and looks at the shadow, asking if it's because he activated the shadow form. He happily says that the power of recovery is simply amazing. Someone tells Yaya to look at yesterday's photo of Jong-yu. They wonder if it's true. The guy is watching Jong-yu's post, which says that he was attacked and struck 88 times, but let them see that he remained unharmed. The green-haired girl says that Jong-yu said that he met some merchant and got into a fight with him, except that he still had a watermelon knife with him. The guy asks if he is injured. He suggests to them maybe it's worth visiting him. But Yaya says not to believe him, it's just a dog chasing him. They ask her if it's true. The girl doesn't answer them and thinks to herself, calling Jong-yu stupid, who only knows how to brag. The girl leads them to Jong-yu's house, offering them to see for themselves if they don't believe her. She puts the key in the door. The two are wondering where Yaya got the key to Jong-yu's house. She is confused trying to find an explanation, saying that Uncle Jong-yu gave her the key. They sigh. Yaya opens the door with a flushed face and calls Jong-yu, asking if he is at home because they came to visit him here. They hear a loud and prolonged cry. Jong-yu is writhing in pain. He knelt down and began to press his palms to his stomach. He breathes sharply and quickly, saying how much it hurts him. He covers the wound with his palm, which began to bleed as soon as he removed the bandages and a piece of shadow from his stomach. He speaks pitifully. What carelessness is this? He did not even think that the wound might open. Yaya asks him if he's okay. She runs up to him and helps him up. Against the background, the two who came to visit him are standing at the threshold in shock. Yaya asks if he has any more bandages. How did it happen? He awkwardly replies that he thought the wound had healed, so he took off the bandages. The girl with glasses says with surprise that it looks like he wasn't lying, that he was hurt. The guy next to her awkwardly says that he thinks so too, agreeing with her. The two of them come close to him and begin to feel his body. The guy is surprised and asks when he managed to get so pumped up. He now understands why he rushed into battle with the merchant. The girl pokes at his muscles and says what a charm it is. Yaya approaches him, removes two from Jiang Yu and says that this is enough, so let them step into the living room already. Both answer that they understood and ask them not to push. They hear screams of pain as they leave. The guy asks the girl if he will feel better. She answers with suspicion that, probably, it will be so. Jing Yu grumbles and grumbles that he is in pain. Yaya smears his wound with a remedy using a cotton swab. She starts to get angry. She tells him to stop reacting like that, because she knows this ointment, and that it doesn't hurt at all. They are sitting on the bed. The girl is holding a bottle of ointment in her hand. Jiang Yu stares at Yaya while she says that, in her opinion, it is necessary to treat his wound properly. He already blushes and rejoices. Yaya looks irritated and tired at how the guy is shooting at her, still continuing to run a cotton swab over his wound. She puts the cotton swab back in and tells him that he fights too much, so she asks Xiaoquan to give the medicine. Jing Yu resists and says that it is necessary. He thinks he is stupid and clumsy, so it will only get worse. Yaya looks at him for a long time, and then pulls his cheeks and says that Uncle Lai is not on him. She realizes to herself that he won't do anything anyway. She asks him what he was doing yesterday at all. She strictly asks him not to brag and not to invent any nonsense. He replies that this is just a chivalrous act of justice. She doubts and says that he is lying. Jiang Yu thinks to himself, what else should he tell her? Is it possible that he ran into the shadow layer, killed another there and then returned? Of course she will not believe him. He asks her what time Uncle Lu got back yesterday. She replies that he did not return at all. Then she asks what he's asking. The latter, lowering his eyes, says that it seems to him that the night watch works quite cruelly, and that the main work during the day, and extra hours in the evening, is dangerous, in his opinion. The girl looks down. Her face expresses sadness and sadness. Jiang Yu realizes that Lu Yaya is worried about his father. Most of the employees of the night watch put their lives in danger every day. Uncle Lai was left without an arm. Lin Mo died altogether at the age of 20-odd. Even a strong man like Uncle Lu was seriously injured, which fundamentally affected his stamina. He will have no further progress. Yaya asks him if he passes the martial arts exam, will he come to work in the night watch? He thinks about it. Silence comes. He answers uncertainly that he does not know. Yaya looks at him with sad surprise. Jiang Yu changes the atmosphere and asks her if there are beauties there. He smiles broadly with all his teeth and laughs, scratching his head. Yaya gets angry, blushes. She grabs his cheeks, pulls and tells him to close his mouth. He shouts that it hurts him and asks her not to hit her. He tells her to relax and asks if there are such people there. She asks with displeasure if he hasn't seen it. She decides to show him now. At this time, those two outside the door are listening in on them. Jiang Yu shouts at her to wait and says he doesn't need it. The guy outside the door asks what's going on there. The girl with glasses says irritably, is he still asking? Jiang Yu and Yaya are standing in front of those. There is an awkward silence. The whole beaten Jiang Yu with abrasions and bruises on his face asks them why they came. The guy says they heard that he had a hard time yesterday, so they decided to visit him. The girl asks him if he is better. They think to themselves what it is on his body, and that Lu Yaya is so energetic in their eyes. Jiang Yu awkwardly rubs and hides the abrasions. He tells them not to worry, because he will live. He tells them to sit down, patting the seat on the couch. They sit down next to each other. Jiang Yu begins to tell them that they don't know anything yet. He went to buy soy sauce, and when he left, a large man flashed past him with a bag in his hands. At this time, Yaya also listens to him and sighs from the fact that he has taken up his own again. She interrupts them and tells Jiang Yu that she will go to the store and then throw away his clothes because it's torn anyway. Jiang Yu gives her permission and tells her to throw it away. Those two continue to listen carefully. Jiang Yu continues his story by saying that then another 80 hefty men ran out of the forest. One of them had a huge knife with which he... Then Jiang Yu abruptly remembers something and turns to Yaya. He shouts at her to wait, because he has things left there. He does not have time to reach her, as some kind of pack falls out of the sports shoes. Awkwardness hangs between them. Yaya sees that these are women's accessories, and with all the anger she asks him why he needs it. He begins to justify himself, asking if her stomach didn't hurt yesterday. He wanted to give it to her when he comes from the store. He says he wanted to please her and starts laughing awkwardly. At this time, those two are just enjoying this show. The guy thinks to himself that this kind of thing can only be shared by people close to each other. The girl is already filming everything on camera with the idea that she will show it to the whole class. Jong-yu puts the pack in Yaya's hands and tells her to take it, and, if anything, don't be shy. He raises his thumb up, showing that everything is fine. She looks at it uncertainly. He angrily squeezes this pack and shouts that he shouldn't have. Her face is completely red. She throws the crumpled pack right into his forehead. There is already an imprint on his forehead. He rubs this place and says that she was angry. He does not understand why to shout like that. Those two get up and say that they, too, will probably go. They wish him luck. Someone adds that the two of them look good. They don't understand what it's about. Jong-yu awkwardly says that everyone has left, so now no one will bother. He stretches out his palm and calls up the pupil of the shadow. The floor begins to burn. An eye with a cat's pupil is drawn on it. It begins to take the form of a shadow. Streaks of shadow cover his body and reach his eyes. His eyes are now black. He decides to start with training. The shadow is fully activated and covers Jong-yu's entire body. He is now completely black, which means he is now a shadow. He finds himself in another dimension and says that it's strange because there should be a lot of pollution here. But for some reason he feels only comfort. He describes this feeling as if he had been living in a polluted environment for a long time, and then abruptly found himself in a boundless and clean space. He sees a characteristic of 60% above him and says that this is not bad, because his stomach does not hurt, and his blood volume has increased. He decides that he will start now. He presses himself close to the floor and moves along it in a low position. His outgoing energy begins to increase. At some point he is pushed up that he crashes into the ceiling. Then he falls back to the floor on his back with a strong crash. He rejoices and laughs, saying that there is inexhaustible energy around. He does unusual push-ups. He doesn't just rise and fall, he jumps, pushing off the floor with his limbs. He counts how many push-ups he has done, and in a short period of time he reaches the number 104. The system notifies him that the shadow form is turned on. The exit to the shadow layer is made. He feels how the energy of his body is completely released, so that he becomes free. The shadow moves away from him. The system says that he tried to train. During the training, the bite of the shadow is activated, which absorbs only the darkness from the shadow layer. His physical condition is significantly strengthened. He sees a sample of his body with formulas. The system adds that during the lesson his physical condition will be strengthened. In the process, the system tells him again that his physical condition is strengthening. Jong-yu says that about 1,000 strengthening methods have been obtained. He continues to do exercises. He realizes that there is too little space here, so he decides to practice outside. It opens onto the street next to a playground with exercise equipment. He's coming out of the ground. He says, since he is so capable in this world, shouldn't he be worshipped? He goes to the playground. He holds onto the horizontal bar with one hand and swings, jumping and hanging now with the help of his legs. He shouts that now it is decided. He will become a champion in horizontal bars. Important people are walking in the headquarters of the Night Watch. At the meeting, an employee shouts that, according to reports, riots in the shadow layer have become more frequent, so at the moment it has an unpredictable character. He also informs the others that the level of pollution has increased dramatically, spreading over large areas. Detachments such as B3, B7, and A2 found gaps in the northern, southern, and eastern districts. The others listen to him attentively. The girl with pink hair says that it will not be easy, because judging by the distribution map of the front lines, pollution mainly covers residential areas. She looks at the man who is sitting awkwardly, as if he was guilty of this. She says that it did not happen randomly, as it was before. At the meeting, the formidable guy, the supposed main one, reflects that others have been appearing much more often lately. He thinks there have been 4 incidents in the last 2 days where people have been dragged into the shadow layer. In front of him is a case where a photo of a guy is visible. In his next thoughts, he remembers this guy all wounded and beaten. He thinks it may seem like it's extremely small, but no one knows when the others will attack next. He turns his head, looks at the talking employee, and thinks that compared to the anomaly of the shadow layer, the gaps are much more dangerous. He goes on to argue that if you compare the other in the shadow layer with a ferocious beast, It feels like Godzilla has launched his attack. Suddenly, a man sitting on the sidelines tells them not to be discouraged. He doesn't have one hand, he says it's just suspicions, so don't act like they've already lost. Then he confidently asks them, besides, are they not ready for battle? In response, only tense silence and excited faces. Then their faces soften and relax. They look at their papers with amusement and with a certain pride. The man tells the speaker to continue. He listens and says that now they will move on to the recently suspended. In the evening, a man stands in front of huge windows that allow him to see the whole city. The man takes out a small box and says with a sigh, it was necessary to get into such a mess right before the new year. He is startled when he feels a cookie in his mouth. He realizes that everything has been changed for him again. Suddenly, a pack flies to him. The man reacts quickly and puts his palm under the pack. He turns to Uncle Lee. He asks him what's wrong with his face. Does he really want it too? Maybe he eats cookies and tells him to forget about it and that he's afraid of lung cancer. He laughs loudly, not believing him. The man tells him not to talk nonsense and asks him to tell him why he left him. Uncle Lee pauses, puffing out smoke. Finally, he says that something else has come from above. He is immediately surprised and asks what is there. He closes his eyes and lets out smoke again. The man in shock asks, really more? He sits down and says it's also urgent. He asks Uncle Lee if there is any confirmation. He points and tells him to check the laptop. He opens the laptop with excitement and anxiety. He asks in which direction his daughter will go. Humanities or martial arts. He sees that he has received an urgent notification. It is addressed to the special ones. If they have a second and higher rank, they ask their children to apply for admission. But first they then need to pass an exam. He answers the question and says that they haven't thought about it yet. They decided that they would wait for the results first. He tells Uncle Lee that they only talk about him all the time. What about Lee? He knocks on the table and says that he is not honest in his abilities. In his opinion, he asks, and in general, does he stand out at all? Lee blows out smoke and says he doesn't think so. He asks if he wants to send him to study special humanities. He shakes his head and says no, let him learn ordinary crafts. He is indignant. Is he really joking? Because he has not even passed the test yet. He asks what will happen if he passes it brilliantly. He knows that admission to the faculty of special is mandatory. Lee gets up from his seat and only leaves with the words that they will look again. The man irritably shouts at him to express himself more clearly. At this time, a girl with pink hair comes in and blushes from colliding with them. Lee shouts to Tom to perform his duties with special care. The girl coughs and apologizes for disturbing them. He asks what's the matter and tells her to spread it. She holds out a folder with papers and says that a message has just been received from the shadow layer. He opens the folder and sighs from what he has read. A new report on others speaks of a crazy athlete. His description is as follows: the opponent is a dark, shadow-like creature. For the first time, the target was discovered in the central Kingu Garden. It is assumed that it turned out to be in the society by accident. The target does not get tired at all, showing great interest in sports. There is no desire to attack. When the detector approaches, the opponent stops training and salutes, which confuses those. They watched him for 2 hours. He has a low danger rating, and as a conclusion it is written that currently destruction should not be. The girl says that the observers found a strange other. There are no records about him in the database, so she would like to ask him about him. He gets angry and thinks that this is another such. His teeth are already gritting with anger. He clutches the folder tightly. In the shadow layer, Kyan-Yu sees a huge spider and sees that it is him again. The spider contains a lot of protein, which is several times more than in the same rice. He says that the spider meat is very juicy and delicious, and that after cauterization, the hair is easily removed. He holds the phone and says to try it, then they will realize that the spider meat is not like any other. He pokes something in his phone and says that so many people have appreciated the shadow layer, he is surprised by it. He is sure that very soon he will become popular on the internet. He goes to the recommended tape and is surprised that there are others who shoot others. He says it's weird because he hasn't even published yet. Suddenly the system opens that he is very scared and almost drops the phone. The system says that his attribute is shadow and his ability is decapitation. He is told that if he does not act first, he will die. Do not be afraid to kill yourself. Only after a series of constant murders, he will be able to continue a quiet life. He is told to enjoy the killing process until he reaches an advanced level. Jiang Yu gets angry and asks if they decided to scare him. He waves his fists in front of the system. He notices that he is given a deadline of 100 hours. He realizes with horror and says that his life will end in 100 hours. The system shows him again and again that he has been given a deadline of 100 hours. He looks and can't understand how it happened, why there are only 100 hours left. He sharply recalls how he was told that there would be certain risks when opening this skill. He argues, is it possible that these are certain risks that were mentioned earlier? He exclaims that this is a real disaster. Then he regains his breath and tells himself to calm down, because the main thing is not to worry, so he needs to come up with something. He keeps reading that if he doesn't perform first, he will die. Do not be afraid to kill. Only after a series of constant murders, he will be able to continue a quiet life. He is told to enjoy the killing process until he reaches an advanced level. He thinks that he needs to fulfill the position of a hunter and hunt. In other words, he can live while he kills others. He is given a statement that a risky life and constant killing is an integral part of a hunter's life. Perhaps he will find eternal life by committing endless murders. He says that, judging by the text, with the help of hunting, you can get immortality. He reads on. It says that decapitation also has another personality. At the death of the physical body, it will simply pass into another shell. He wonders what this other shell means. He does not understand what it means to enjoy the process of killing. He will not be able to be happy because of this. He says that if he can't kill the other, then he will have to turn to Uncle Lee. He looks out of the corner and looks at the spider. He thinks he should kill him to earn life points. He puts the phone to the bucket, fixing it with a stone, and says that this opportunity is quite rare, so he decides to make a video. He adds that in any case, he is not afraid that the night watch will catch him, and that this is impossible. He calls the shadow. It completely envelops him. He turns black. His phone makes a sound that the shooting has started. He goes to the camera and says that there are quite a few others. Now they will be able to observe one of them. He greets his audience and says that he is Xiaoi, and that today they have a different one in the form of a spider. They write comments to him, saying that he is so cool. Some do not believe that this is reality. A spider is visible right on the camera. Jiang Yu suggests that they do not interfere, quietly approach him and give him a stick. He comes closer and closer to the spider with the bat, voicing his movements, saying that he would rather be silent so as not to break the silence. His bat is steel, which has been spent. Several thousand yuan is about to go into action. Suddenly, the spider starts to freak out and spin. Jiang Yu is really scared and stands straight with panic. The spider looks around. The spider looks in the other direction. He moves to the opposite side, raising his hands up. His heart is pounding loudly with fear, sweat is pouring from him. He understands that something has gone wrong. The spider keeps looking around and can't figure out who's next. Jiang Yu understands that even if he stands close, he won't be able to see him, so he loves the shape of the shadow. He exhales and decides that now he needs to learn about his weaknesses. He sees a red light at a certain point and understands that the weak side is just here. He attacks with his weapon and screams to himself to get the spider. A malicious smile lights up his face. Half an hour before the attack, the spider enjoys and says that he has been in this world for a long time. He believes that the situation is very comfortable. There is no depressing atmosphere, and there are no terrifying and strong guys. He only needs to be careful. Then he will be able to live in complete comfort. The spider gets pleasure and laughs from lightness. He says that, however, he literally just had to fight with one ugly guy. He says he hurt himself a little, but he got a full meal. He decides that he needs to get some sleep, and then he will recover. After a while, his spider sensor is triggered, and he realizes that someone is watching him. He turns around, but sees nothing. He says it's strange and doesn't understand where from, but he feels that he is definitely somewhere nearby. He gets up and says that okay, this place has always seemed unsafe to him, so he decides to spend the night somewhere else. Still, he feels someone else's energy, does not have time to turn around. As he receives a blow, he is electrocuted. It falls with a big crash. Jiang Yu says it's amazing because he felt the shadow flowing out of him like a river. He realized that then it turns out that by finding the right point to strike, he will be able to unleash all his power. He holds his weapon tighter and says that it's great and that there's only 40% of blood left, a couple more. He doesn't finish because he's being attacked. He manages to dodge and falls on his back. The blow goes further, destroying the back behind. He gets up, laughs nervously and says it doesn't hurt at all. The evil spider screams loudly in pain. Blood flows from it. Jiang realizes that he drove the stick straight into his weak spot, thereby causing bleeding. He steps with his foot and uses a shadow attack. In an instant, he evaporates on the floor, spreading out as if he were a liquid. He finds himself in such a space, as if in a huge ocean. He thinks, is this really a shadow attack? Skillfully attacks from the shadows, like a stalker. How at a depth he sees a spider in a shell through the water. He says there is no need to fight the other face to face. He just needs to wait for the right moment to attack. He watches the spider, which is still twitching, trying to free itself from the stick on its back. Jiangyu says that after that he needs to give the victim a fatal blow. He watches as the spider swings from side to side, the stick on its back wobbles. He says that the other is special, and he is only prey for the hunter. He smiles and says that's when the hunt started. Someone is watching on the phone as the guy says that the night watch is on guard for their safety. He greets and introduces himself as a member of the night watch at work. Today he is going to explain the construction of low-ranking ones. A certain Lalala also greets and says that today they are going to a small restaurant in the alley with them. Someone else on the phone says if the audience knows that he's been completely busy lately. Someone says hello again and says that he is helping his family, and that some kind of lighter is his family. If he can't lift it, then it's over. This is a girl flipping through the airs. He has snow-colored hair. She says it's nothing, there's nothing interesting lately. She thinks it's all boring. She flipped to the broadcast of Jiangyu, who says that his name is Yu and he is from Beidou. She, as soon as she sees these black, like shadows, legs, is interested in shock. What kind of place is this? He raises the camera and shows other monsters. She already lifts herself up and wonders if it's really others. He can't believe, is it really not a substitution? He says that this creature is called a shadow spider, an ancient kind of ghost, the first rank and is the lowest other. Jiangyu says that the shackles on the spider can make terrible sounds. Ordinary people will not stand it. Therefore, in his opinion, it is better not to listen to such things. In the comments they write that Brother EU is so beautiful and cold. The user asks the others if they agree. The girl who looks at him starts to get angry and calls the commentators a flock of sheep, because they only do what they post their disgusting and fictional comments on the internet. She says that if only their parents could see what they are writing about. She declares that she hates their brash behavior. She thinks a little, looks closely and writes that she can help him. Suddenly, he disappears from the screen. She looks more closely and asks if he has disappeared. Is this broadcast being conducted by another? She glows with happiness and says that it seems that everything is getting much more interesting. At this time, Jiangyu is still fighting the spider. He jumps high above him. He aims his foot directly at the stick, and then pierces the stick with his weight to the end in the spider's back. The spider screams in pain and misunderstanding what is happening. He keeps twitching, clumsily getting into other things. Everything is smoking from the blow. He looks more closely into the hole from where the bright energy comes. However, Jiangyu pokes at his body from the other side. Spider turns around. Jiangyu awkwardly and irritatingly says that he is here. Jiangyu continues to fight and annoy monsters. He laughs and says he didn't hit it again. The blows only pass through, without harming him in any way. He plays with them again and again, voicing his location. He laughs, dodging, and asks, well, can't this big guy get it? A girl with snow-white hair looks without looking up and says how fast he moves. She thinks he's handsome. She is lying under a blanket, hugging a pillow. She says with burning eyes, what a fast and cute presenter he is. A poisonous purple liquid comes out of the spider. Suddenly the spider is surrounded by this acid as a barrier. The spider just laughs and tells his enemy to fight. The spider turns to the voice of the shadow, who asks if he really thinks that he can't do anything if the earth is covered with acid. Spider sees Jiangyu on the roof of the building and is surprised. Jiangyu says that shadows are everywhere and abruptly descends from the building. The spider releases acid from its mouth again, which covers a large area of the building wall. Jiangyu says he can move freely in them. He keeps saying, moving quickly around the building, that he can teleport, go through buildings as much as needed. He comes out through the shadow of the building itself and says that he is a hunter from the shadow. He pulls out his weapon and aims directly at the spider, saying that the endless murders have begun to destroy his memory. But he remembers his name clearly. He descends and finds himself under a spider. He just raises his stick up, piercing the spider's face vertically. The spider moans and screams in pain. Jiangyu, lying under the spider and holding the stick tightly, says his name is Yu. He picks up from his seat, stands directly in front of the spider and uses the shadow bite. The shadow emanating from him seems to embrace the spider with its tentacles. He keeps a close eye on the dying spider. Suddenly he has white ribbons. These ribbons cover his hands from the tips and then turn into a cloak. He says that the hunt is over. There is a huge skeleton of a spider in front of him. At this time, that girl with snow-white hair screams with delight, how exciting it is. She happily says, without letting the phone out of her hands, that she has not seen this for a long time. The girl says that you need to pay attention to yourself. She immediately writes to him in private messages asking if he would like to take her with him on a Star B mission. Jiang Yu is looking at the characteristics of the shadow spider. He belongs to the ancient demons, and his level is of medium rank. This monster is the lowest of the other abyss, belonging to the genus of an ancient demon. The lines on the spider's body represent its strength. His abilities were acid, net spitting, and pollution. For his victory, he was given the ability to network shadows, as well as shadow points and other records. Jiang Yu sighs in frustration. He wonders, it turns out that he only has the first level of the middle rank. He thought he had defeated a strong enemy. He keeps thinking that there was a big gap in strength between him and this other, but he took advantage of the shadow attack. He picks up his phone and rejoices because there were 150 spectators. He is surprised that there were so many spectators. He laughs and says that the live broadcast is over and that for today he will leave the audience in the dark. Will warm up their interest. He looks at his palm and sees some threads enveloping his hand. He realizes that this is his new shadow net ability. He holds out his hand, and a spider web comes out of it, just like a spider. As soon as the thread reaches a solid point, he is thrown out after the thread, which he did not expect. He screams in surprise and holds on tightly to the threads. He soars and flies in the air, looking down. He says he's Spider-Man. However, the next second he crashes painfully into the wall, and then falls down. He now stands steadily on the lantern and says with a groan how painful it is. He decides that he will need to practice more with her. He opens the system and sees that he now has a new deadline of 7 days. He says sadly and disappointingly, has life expectancy increased by only 3 days. This is less than he expected. He inspects the area and says that despite the fact that there are still 7 days left, others are not so easy to find, so he decides to hedge his bets. The system gives him a third note, which says that the hunter must hide in the shadows. The more he hides, the higher his reputation. The system beeps something and notifies that a new value has been unlocked, authority. He looks at the system with bewilderment and strains. He is told that he can mark his victim so that it is easier to find her weak points and strike. The victim, he notes, will have a rapid heartbeat, fear and other negative states, and that the result depends on the difference in strength. For a single target, a label can be created only for 1 second, with an increase in reputation. This time increases. He is advised to pay attention to the fact that a certain amount of energy is charged for each label. This ability reveals his location. He must use it with all caution. When he hunts marked prey, he gains agility, strength, if he manages to hunt successfully. One of his attributes or abilities will be improved to a certain extent. He is again told to pay attention to the fact that hunting does not require energy consumption. This ability has the same duration as the mark, so he is asked to kill prey during the hunting time, and increasing his reputation will strengthen his ability. Jiang Yu awkwardly scratches the back of his head and asks if authority has been unblocked. When did he manage to become famous? He remembers about 150 viewers and wonders if it's because of the live broadcast. He smiles and says that he will hunt others, gain subscribers, and discover new abilities. With such a set, both strength and abilities will increase. He decides that he needs to try harder today. Suddenly his eye is activated and he sees the monster, and then immediately his weak spots in his arm and back. He says it's ours and immediately accepts decapitation, jumping to the monster with great enthusiasm. Returning to the ordinary world, Jiang Yu receives cotton wool on tweezers from Lu Yaya. He pulls away abruptly and shouts that it hurts him, covering his cheek with his palm. Domineering and angry, Lu Yaya asks, well, what's up with him, with whom he fought again? She continues to treat him. Both of them are sitting on the sofa in front of the coffee table. Jiang Yu tells her to calm down and adds that he is going to become a hero and that he will not understand. She irritably asks if this is really true, and how many heroes whine every day about how much it hurts them. Then she pokes him in the nose again and tells him not to climb if he doesn't have the right skills. He says that he could heal his injuries in a matter of seconds with the help of a shadow shape, and then adds that he does not turn it on at all so that it would help him. Yaya looks at him questioningly and suspiciously, and then asks what he is talking about. He immediately changes the subject and awkwardly asks if they can watch some movie. He would be happy to do it. He nervously drinks water from a bottle. The girl says there's nothing much to watch. He pokes something in his phone and tells him with a smile that a new blogger has recently appeared, which has aroused everyone's interest. Jiang Yu immediately turns around and asks what other interest. She hands him the phone and tells him to look. He looks with great interest. He sees himself on the screen, who calls himself EU and appears to be a murderer in the shadows. Water from Jiang Yu's mouth gushes from shock. Yaya pulls away in disgust and asks what he's doing. Is he really that stunned? He turns to her. Water is flowing from his nose and mouth. He hesitantly says that it's nothing, and then asks if he's been watching it lately, rubbing the water from his face with the back of his hand. She replies with great love and enthusiasm that, of course, she is watching, and for 2 days for sure, leaning over Jiang Yu's shoulder. She says that this EU has become the most popular and unusual blogger. He awkwardly asks if it's true, says it's very cool, but isn't the publication of others punishable by law? He thinks to himself that he somehow became famous too quickly, no matter how the night watch caught him. Yaya looks at him and says with a serious face that he should not disclose his knowledge about them, because his current shows do not particularly affect people's consciousness, so everything is fine. She shows him everything and tells him to watch the real fight with the other. She takes him by the elbow, presses him to her and asks if he is not cool, and that you need to take an example from him. Jiang Yu is already blushing from such interaction and praise. He thinks and looks at the girl's phone screen. She keeps telling him to watch that there is another video, but another blogger has already made an analysis of his videos. Jiang Yu smiles sincerely and looks at Yaya, who is interested in this. She gets up, makes a pose and asks him if he thinks she will be able to become famous too. Jiang Yu asks what she will take off. Will she really put on a white silk dress and start dancing in the shadow layer? She insidiously asks and is outraged. What else? Because you can also record several videos about others. He asks if she thinks it would be somehow too informative. He asks if she will really be like a member of the Night Watch, and then adds that if she goes out in such an outfit, her fans will start surveillance. She blushes awkwardly and covers herself. Jiang Yu says that nothing good should be expected then, folding his hands in front of him, showing discontent. She gets angry and asks again, is it really nothing good? She moves quickly, turns out to be behind Jiang Yu with a gun. She puts a gun to his side and asks if he really got his injury when he was also tracking someone. He immediately gets scared, raises his hands and shouts that he was joking. She pokes him with a gun and says, how does she know that he is telling the truth? Jiang Yu officially calls her Officer Lu and asks her to give him a break. She pushes him and tells him to go cook. Jiang Yu plops down on the sofa with a heavy weight, showing his fatigue. He exhales and says that she has finally left. He reads messages asking who he is, why he publishes these videos. Is he really from Beidou? Someone calls him uncle and also asks if he is from the Night Watch. Maybe this is some kind of scenario. Jiang Yu says that so many messages are even annoying a bit. He peers and notices something. Someone claims that this video is fake, and that he does not deserve it, because the Night Watch is working hard, and he is the center of attention. He reads it all and wonders what kind of jokes they are. Do they really think he's a fraud? They send him some kind of link, he follows it. A video opens in which a person greets, appears to be an earthly Tao, and that today they will not go shopping, but rather sort out one fraudster. The old man asks the audience, after all, they all watched that video. What else for the EU, others, and who he is in general? He says that the shadow layer, the other, the killer with amnesia, various songs. Does everyone really think that this is for real? The old man says that he will show them the video and offers to analyze it carefully with him. He shows 2 frames and offers to look at them. He says that you can see that there is no smooth transition between them, so it is concluded that the video is glued. He offers to look at the background again and says that it is quite obvious that after the video was taken, the installation was carried out. Jiang Yu doesn't understand. Isn't this an ordinary culinary blogger walking around various restaurants? Why would he shoot a kind of revealing video on him? Besides, he only cut out a few of his photos. Is this also considered Photoshop? The old man in the video answers the question why he decided to take a review on him by saying that everything is simple. He is a freelance employee of the Night Watch. He claims that when he was young, he killed countless others so that he can recognize a fake at a glance. Now he offers to discuss something else. Jiang Yu decides to open the comments of this video. One user claims that he does not believe this and that he was filming the truth because the question arises, how can the shadow layer be faked and otherwise? Someone says that the whole story was a fake from the very beginning. Jiang Yu sighs, calls them stupid people, and that they don't understand anything. He rubs his forehead and says that someday they will know the truth. He gets up from the sofa, stretches and says that okay, since his video is fake, it's time to start hunting others. But before that he decides to teach this earthly Tao a lesson. Numerous comments that he is a debtor, the blogger is a fake. Some ask him if this is really true. Someone is now in turmoil, and that everything was not so simple with the EU. They wonder who he is. They doubt that he is an ordinary person. He holds out his hand and says they're about to start. He is a born hunter, a man who terrifies enemies. In the shadow layer, he takes a mini camera in his hand and attaches it directly to his chest. He reflects that it seems that the number of others is less than yesterday, because the shadow layer is reset from time to time. His eyes notice something. He focuses his attention on the monster. A monster appears in front of him with tentacles sticking out of his mouth. He says it looks like a 6th rank other. He decides it's time for him to get started. He laughs in anticipation of what another of the 6th rank is capable of. He jumps down with his stick and shouts that the hunt has begun. He stops at the edge of the building, thinks for a while, and then sighs. He goes down the stairs like an ordinary person and tells himself to be calm and walk without sudden movements. Yes, it's a powerful killer preying on others, a cute special one who walks up the stairs. He watches the monster. As soon as he sees the monster up close, he sighs. The monster's face turns towards him with a sound. Jiang Yu immediately uses the tag at this time. The monster notices something. A mark from different circles appears around him in Jiang Yu's eyes, aiming directly at him. Jiang Yu understands that the marked one feels an inexplicable fear at the same moment. He remembers that he is very similar to the other with blades, whom he has already encountered before. He thinks maybe he's evolved. The monster turns convulsively and looks around, not understanding his feelings. Jiang Yu then wonders, so what? He has also undergone changes. He uses the 6-punch technique and sticks his stick right into his stomach, making him rise higher. His blood level dropped to 45%. The monster realizes that something is wrong and jumps up even higher. Jiang Yu realized that the chase had begun. His tag and chase are activated. His strength and agility are increased by 1 second. Additional gains can be obtained by killing the target in a certain period of time. He jumps high and appears right in front of the monster and swings his stick. He aims and strikes in the direction of the monster. However, this monster dodges the blow. Jiang Yu is shocked. The monster decides to run again and rises even higher. Jiang Yu follows him, pushing off the wall and jumping even higher behind him. He appears again before the monster. The monster growls at him. Its mouth opens wider, tentacles stretch longer, spikes are arranged in them. There is some energy between the tentacles. Jiang Yu stands and covers himself with his stick. The monster seems to transmit certain sound waves from its mouth. Jiang Yu feels that his head is spinning. He thinks that the monster is mentally attacking him. Suddenly, the monster's strength and energy envelops him. He doesn't understand what it is and pulls away from him. His blood level dropped to 66%. He admits that it was powerful because he consumed 34% of blood in one hit. The monster is coming right at him. Jiang Yu thinks to himself that this guy has very powerful attacks. He decides that he needs to stick to some strategy. The monster attacks him again and again with its waves, and he plays, laughs, and says that he did not hit him. The waves fly straight towards him. He quickly moves in the shadows, hiding from his blows. The monster attacks more powerfully, sending energy from all sides. He evaporates into the shadow. Falling down, the monster looks around in confusion. At this time, Jiang Yu prepares his fist and then gives it to him in the stomach. Jiang Yu calls him stupid and tells him to look from above. Then he pushes off the ground, jumps, and says that despite the fact that he has evolved, his skills have remained the same. He makes dozens of blows at the monster from different sides at high speed. Jiang Yu declares that this is his territory, and that the monster is not in the black today. The monster keeps getting hit, and then tries to stretch out its tentacles and strange hands. Jiang Yu says that he is still trying, but he will not succeed, which he is sure of. He gives him a kick. Then he punches the monster right in his head. The monster is already exhausted. At this time, Jiang Yu raises his fists and uses decapitation. He sees a red dot, that is, a weak spot. He drops his fists abruptly, and then abruptly stops right in front of the monster's face. Jiang Yu is breathing heavily, coughing, and does not understand what it is. The monster's face clears up. Human eyes and facial features are hidden there. He says he's from the Night Watch. Jiang Yu does not understand what is the matter. Has he been taken away? Why has he become like this? Why is he here again? Then the monster roars loudly that Jiang Yu flies back. The monster starts to run. Jiang Yu remains in place and only shouts at him to stand. Then he decides to catch up with him and shouts after him that he just wants to talk. He asks him to stand. As a result, Jiang Yu only breathes heavily all the way, trying to regain his breath. His legs are barely walking. He will continue to breathe loudly and intermittently. The system notifies that he has found his prey, and that he is a man who is passionate about his business. So let him look forward to the next successful hunt. He takes steps. The system says that the hunt was almost successful, but at the last moment the victim disappeared, so, unfortunately, the hunt failed. The system asks him to pay attention to the fact that prolonged failure will weaken him, shorten his life expectancy. System also says that deep down he understands that only a constant hunt to increase his authority, and he will gain power over death. But at the moment he wonders what life means. Is it hunting or something else, according to the system? From such words, Jiang Yu's face is filled with sadness. The system then tells him to expect death, that he will be in constant expectation, namely, waiting for death. He gets angry and punches right on the system's screen. He tells him to stop saying it. A crack is heard, he sighs. He puts his hand on his forehead and says that a hero who sacrifices himself to save people becomes like this. He sees his shadow reflection. He wonders if he will die. Will he turn into a monster too? He clenches his fist and says there is no turning back and that he must keep hunting. His strength is gaining again. In the Eastern District number 1 at the gathering place, Jiang Yu looks at his phone. He says it's here. They said on the news that others are constantly gathering here, so he has nothing to worry about. It activates the pupil of the shadow. The shadow part covers it with a diameter of 1 meter. He is already in another place through the portal. He looks around and thinks that, of course, the number of others here is much greater, but they are not very brave, so they will not leave the building. He sees only small glowing shadows from different windows of the building. He notices someone more powerful on the roof. He watches the monster and says that he is incredibly strong. The monster's body resembles a human. He is muscular, with horns on his head, enjoying his food. It has long and sharp claws. Jiang Yu analyzes and says that his leg is seriously injured, so his blood volume has dropped. He smiles and says that it's fine, and that he won't give up anymore. Jiang Yu goes out behind the shadows and quietly watches the powerful monster from behind. The monster, as if he noticed something, turns to face him. As soon as he turns around, Jiang Yu sees 4 weak points in him. These are the joints of all his limbs. Jiang Yu immediately disappears into his shadow. He is in the depths of another dimension, wondering if he is really so vigilant. The monster approaches his shadow and examines it carefully. Jiang Yu thinks that the others here are much more careful than in his territory. He's on the edge of the building thinking that this guy seems to be very sensitive. He notices that the red dots on his body have weakened. He suspects that it is because of his attentiveness. He keeps telling himself that he needs to be calmed down. The monster is still twitching in a frenzy, turning in different directions. Jiang Yu decides that he will have to be patient and wait for him to calm down. As soon as the monster turns in the other direction, Jiang Yu sees the red dots already from the back and says that it is now possible to act. He uses his own label. At this time, in the real world, Yaya is frying vegetables and meat in a frying pan. She tastes the dishes, then hears the door slam. She immediately begins to resent where he was that he returned so late. She turns around with displeased words that he could help her. His dad and Uncle Lee are standing in front of him. Uncle Lee asks if she's cooking for Jiang Yu again. Her father says that, apparently, he raised his daughter for his family. Yaya blushes, shakes his head and tells his dad that he is talking nonsense again. She asks them why they came back so early. Her dad says that things are over at the office, so they decided to leave. He adds that it is rare to get together and have a delicious meal. He suggests they go to a restaurant. Yaya replies that there is no need because she is almost done. Her father awkwardly scratches the back of his head, not knowing what to say. Uncle Lee sits down on a chair and says that then they will go another day, but in the meantime he offers to sit here together. Lai asks the girl if Jiang Yu isn't there. She replies that she doesn't know. She assumes that maybe he went out for a walk. Uncle Lee starts swearing that it's outrageous how he could have gone off to have fun, leaving her here alone. Then Jiang Yu comes in and says that he wants to eat 3 times, and that he is so hungry. He takes off his shoes. All his clothes are worn and torn. He asks what Yaya cooked today. He notes that it smells insanely delicious. He says he's in a good mood today, so he decided to buy her a favorite lollipop. He adds that it cost him dearly, and he was almost killed by dogs along the way. He shows a lollipop and says that she wrote him so much. He asks if she missed him. He turns around and sees everyone. Uncle Lai sits at the table annoyed. Yaya's father looks at him accusingly, and Yaya herself with red cheeks does not even know what to say. Jiang Yu stiffens, falls silent, sweat flows from him. He swallows from tension and fear. He puts the lollipop back in his pocket. Then he says with a smile and awkwardness that he was detained by a dog, and that he got into trouble on the way. He laughs nervously and says that's how it turned out. His face is completely bruised. He points his finger at his face, covering his eyes and smiling awkwardly. Uncle Lee points to the table with his palm and says that it is rare to have a moment to sit together, so he asks him not to spoil the fun, so let him sit down. Jiang Yu obeys him, sits down next to him. Uncle puts his hand on his shoulder with a clap and says that all the guys are fighting and that there's nothing wrong with it. He is awkwardly silent. Yaoyao's father says he doesn't see anything in showing off to a girl he likes when he's young either, so it's fine. He pours water into a glass. Then he asks, saying that he saw him walking with a lady in a short skirt. He asks what her name is. Yaoyao answers for him and says that her name is Yu Zhaoer. He continues to say that she is for sure, and that she is pretty, white, clean, and she is not deprived of a figure. In his opinion, when he was young, he would have given anything for such a girl. He says they'll celebrate Uncle Lu's success. Jiang Yu sees Red Yao emotionally eating food. He thinks to himself, how can they say such a thing in front of Lu Yao, because her face is so red. Uncle Li invites everyone to raise their glasses. Jiang Yu says with a smile that everything is for him. He thinks to himself that, unfortunately, these howls will not leave a wet spot with him. Jiang Yu drinks the most ordinary drink in one gulp. Yaoyao's father looks at him and thinks that he is not bad. Jiang Yu holds out the food and tells Uncle Lu to eat vegetables, because he is not at home all day. He does not think that he often manages to eat Yaoyao's cooking. Her father agrees and says that this is the case, a rather rare opportunity. Jiang Yu smiles and praises the girl, saying that Yaoyao often cooks at home, in his opinion, so it's not surprising that her skill is on top. Yaoyao's father is tense from such information. He looks at his daughter and thinks, what is it, then why is he eating takeaway food? He thinks that, apparently, she puts a lot of effort into taking care of Jiang Yu, even cooking such a variety of dishes. Jiang Yu laughs to herself at her father's reaction. He awkwardly and nervously sips his drink in his thoughts. They finish eating. Uncle Lai offers Jiang Yu a drink for Uncle Lu's success. He wishes him success in his work. The latter awkwardly thanks him. After a while they leave. Jiang Yu wishes Yao and her father a safe journey. Uncle Lai says they will meet soon. The girl waves to them and leaves with her father. They come back in. Jiang Yu asks if he wants a drink. He replies that he does not want to. Uncle Li plops down heavily and loudly on the sofa. He greedily drinks water from a bottle that drops of water flow down from his mouth onto his clothes. Uncle Li looks at him suspiciously quietly. Then he starts saying that he wanted to ask him something. He stops drinking and pays attention to him. Uncle Li asks him if he thinks he has any abilities. He opens his eyes in shock, not believing his ears, and asks him again. Jiang Yu nervously continues to drink water and asks again if he really asks what he thinks about it. He says that he has been serving in the night watch for 20 years. Does Jiang Yu really think that he cannot recognize his injuries? He demands to tell him when his abilities have manifested. He first exhales from embarrassment, and then plops down on the sofa next to him and replies that half a month ago. He immediately asks how they woke up. He nervously asks if this is really an interrogation. He tells him not to worry and just talk. Jiang Yu repeats the question about how they woke up, then answers that he didn't really understand himself, because they just suddenly appeared. He asks, really by themselves, because this kind of situation happens extremely rarely, about once a year. After thinking about it, he spreads his palm and says, maybe it's all thanks to his talents. He looks at him angrily and seriously. He already strains and calls him by name. Uncle Li says to relax. Jiang Yu thinks Uncle Lai has activated abilities. The elder says that this year there will be a test, and that everyone should pass the martial arts exam. He replies that he and Yaya know about it. He is surprised that the girl also knows about it. He says that in recent years, the night watch unit has been under intense pressure. The number of victims is constantly growing. Jiang Yu listens to him attentively. He says that he can give him a backup option. If he can't pass the martial arts exam, then it's okay. Jiang Yu is surprised and asks what the backup option is, and thinks to himself, is it really possible at all? He says that he will be able to choose one of several universities for admission. He asks if he doesn't like comics, he can enroll in an art department, or something else, and that this is implemented without problems. Jiang Yu thinks to himself, is Uncle Lai really that cool? He asks if he doesn't want to enroll, can he just pick up the certificate? He asks this with a kind of challenge and provocation. Uncle Li is in shock. He gives him a hard slap in the face and shouts, what else did he want? He calmly tells him that he will go to Lindong University and that there is a very favorable atmosphere there. When he completes his studies, he will get him a stable job, and then he will live happily with Yao. He covers his eyes and calls Uncle Li by name. He looks at him and waits for what he will say. Jiang Yu tells him with great confidence that he wants to try to become special. Uncle Li immediately gets up and boils with anger. He points at him and shouts that this will not happen, and that he must obey him. Then there is a sudden silence. You can only hear that Uncle Lee is breathing heavily. Sweat is already streaming from his face. Jiang Yu, in turn, raises his index finger up and says that this will not happen if he does not allow it. Then he will go to the night watch and pawn it. He does not understand the phrase that he will pawn it and pulls away. Silence hangs between them. Uncle Lee says that he is not joking, and that the world of the special is much more dangerous than he can imagine. He tells him to study with a calm soul, and he will take care of everything himself. Jiang Yu tells him that he is also serious, that danger lurks everywhere. Besides, he will not be able to take care of him forever. That's right. There is silence again, comprehension of words. The uncle, as if disappointed, turns his head and says that it's okay, but he thinks that he will regret his decision. Then he adds with a sigh that if he wants to transfer, he can contact him at any time. Jiang Yu tells him just not to put a stick in his wheels. He leaves in an angry mood and informs about it. Jiang Yu asks him to wait. He stops and turns to him. He says that the last time he looked through the information that Lu Yaya shared, it said that the special ones should use all their powers before death, so as not to turn into another. He asks him if there is a chance that a person will still become different, even if he has exhausted all his strength. Uncle Lee is straining and says that, of course, there is. A similar situation can arise if a person has special abilities, or there were external interference. He replies that he understood him. Uncle Lee says suspiciously, why is he asking? He scratches the back of his head and says that this is just a sporting interest. Uncle Lee puts on his shoes and tells him that if he chooses martial arts, he will have to face all this sooner or later. He advises him to take a break and stop fighting already. He smiles and says that he listens to him. Then Uncle Lee turns around again and says he almost forgot something. He says that this year's test will take place before the new year. Jiang Yu wonders if it's really so soon. The uncle goes to the door and tells him to get ready. He stays with these thoughts. He sits down on the sofa, spreads his arms comfortably. His gaze is directed upwards. He remembers everything and reflects. Did he become different because of his abilities or because of the influence of something external? After all, the night watch should take all people, regardless of what abilities they have. He keeps remembering faces and thinking, maybe he made a mistake in something, or someone else has the ability to cause hallucinations. The girl with snow-white hair receives a notification that the blogger EU has published a new video. She happily picks up the phone and rejoices at the update. There are a lot of comments that this is another deception, and that the Night Watch kills others with weapons, and he is the only one who relies on editing to increase popularity. She gets angry and says that the number of haters has increased significantly recently. She thinks they're just jealous of his skills, and she'd see how long they last. She boils up with anger, how it infuriates her. She herself writes a comment that they do not understand anything, so they write that this is a montage. He aggressively pokes at the phone screen. Out of resentment, she says that Brother Yi is definitely not a liar. She is offended for him. She says that otherwise he would not have released such videos. He says in the video that if he doesn't kill, he will die himself. The video begins with a view from a tall building, his legs dangling down from the edge. She wonders how cool it is and what kind of view it is. She is completely immersed in the video and feels as if she is in the shadow layer with him. He seems to be falling with him and feels this wind from the resistance. She opens her eyes, then feels that she is flying with him, holding him tightly by the waist. She gets pleasure and thinks it's cool. She wonders if this is the strength of the special. Suddenly, some forces attack him. The monster's huge foot has pinned him to the ground, and the girl herself is lying behind him. She looks at the monster and realizes that it really is different. She sees Jiang Yu letting threads out of his hands like a spider and jumping up, ending up above the other. The girl keeps watching him and thinks how handsome he is. The girl feels as if the monster and EU are fighting right in front of her. The guy kicks the monster in the face. The girl thinks how exciting it is. She wonders if this is really a real battle of the special with the other. She thinks that everything is real, and that it is impossible to fake it, so there can be no mistake. Jiang Yu jumps high and pierces the other's body with his hand. The girl says it's true, the killer from Beidou. Jiang Yu straightens up, uses a shadow bite. The girl watches this carefully. She wonders if he has absorbed another. Is it really because he has already absorbed another spider earlier? She keeps wondering if he will get new abilities. Meanwhile, Jiang Yu himself takes off his clothes, throws them into a box. He looks at his abrasions. He says that others in this area are very strong. If they had not been injured, he would not have survived, in his opinion. He takes a bandage and wraps his chest and shoulder blades with it, when suddenly he hears an alert on his phone. He opens it and sees that it is again a video from the earthly Tao. who plans to watch the video of the blogger Yu again today. He notices that this time everything looks more realistic, but nothing can escape his eyes. He shows everything and says, as everyone sees, some are seriously injured, and others are very weak in this state, so even an ordinary person can deal with them. Tao asks the audience if a special one would pay attention to such weaklings. Jiang Yu is already turning blue with anger. He closes the video and turns off the phone. He thinks to himself that the fight didn't turn out very well. He agrees with that. He's how angry he is. He sits down on the sofa and reflects that his current strength is not enough for something more. He says out loud that he has to get stronger. Then he adds that he is so much stronger that no one else dares to doubt him. He smiles and clenches his fist. The system shows him his characteristics. He has shadow bite abilities, shadow pupil, shadow shape, decapitation, shadow claw, shadow walk. His life expectancy is 12 days, and as an estimate it is written that he looks strong, but is actually weak. Jiang Yu gets angry and says what kind of weakling, but he would have endured 200 Yao and 15 Uncle Lai. He hits the system window and clenches his fist in rage. He sits down on the sofa and calmly reflects that, however, his current abilities are not enough, so he needs to become stronger. Thanks to these battles, he has acquired new skills. First of all, as for the shadow glasses, he thought it was an experience panel, but it's kind of an energy indicator, as he thinks. He says that it takes about 3 points to use the shadow thread and the shadow pupil, and that decapitation, tagging, and chasing have varying degrees of consumption. A ball appears on his palm. He says that the shape of the shadow depends on the environment. For example, in the shadow layer, consumption will be low. If you just go into the shade, consumption will be estimated as average, and in sunlight it is large. He clenches his fist sharply, as if grabbing this force in the palm of his hand. Then he remembers that the test will take place very soon. He goes outside and says that he thinks that the special ones are very strong. He can only fight them in the form of a shadow, and even then he doubts that this will last for a long time. But even his current strength should be enough to scare them off, in his opinion. He looks at the flying eagle and says that everything should work out, but there may be a lot of problems, so he shouts, raising his index finger up, that restraint is not about him. He decides to give it his all. He adds that in any case, Uncle Lee will be for him, so why should he be afraid? He laughs loudly and gaily. He is laughing and laughing on the balcony while the old man from the lower floor is watering his flowers. Jiang Yu keeps shouting that he will definitely be happy and starts laughing again. The old man from below hears it all, looks up and says with pity that he seems to have gone mad. The next day, a tired and listless Jiang Yu is sitting in the mall. That chubby boy is sitting next to him. He is outraged, saying that the girls are liars. Didn't they say that everything would take an hour, because they have been here for eternity? Girls happily and cheerfully reconcile dresses in different stores. Jiang Yu says that if he continues to waste his life like this, he won't last a few days. His friend tells him not to joke like that on the eve of the new year because it's unfortunate. Jiang Yu says that he is not joking, because if he does not kill, he will die himself. He looks at his friend seriously. The latter, frightened by such suddenness, asks him what he is talking about. He immediately changes the subject and says that he is not talking about anything, and also informs that the girls have finished and come to them. Yaya asks what they are going to eat. The other offers a salad. They leave together, and some black shadow without form follows Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu nonchalantly says that there can be something delicious in the grass. He suggests going to a cafe that students really like. The shadow begins to twitch and move erratically. They open the menu. It says that they serve garlic oysters, steamed oysters, fried leeks, and so on. Yao irritably asks if this is really the cafe that the students like so much. The other girl agrees and says that this cafe is more for guys. Jiang Yu says that he was injured recently, so he needs to catch up. He dictates his order to the waiter: toast, fried rice and soy sauce, egg soup, and this wonderful dish. The waiter listens to him. Yaya is surprised and says that all the dishes are ordinary. She thought he would choose something special. Jiang Yu says that he is right that the dishes are ordinary, so he asks the waiter to serve oysters, but bigger and fresher. They are brought in order and wish them a pleasant appetite. Jiang Yu hands Yaya an oyster and tells her not to get mad and take it. She resists and says she won't eat it. She gets a message on her phone. It says that the martial arts exam will be held earlier. Testing will begin on February 17th, will end on February 20th. A special training camp will open on February 25th. The girlfriend is surprised by the message and asks if the martial arts exam is mandatory. The friend eats a shrimp and says that he will also be ahead of time. He sighs and says how troublesome it is. Jiang Yu tells him not to worry, because his qualifications are still not enough. He irritably thanks him. He says that, as they know, at the age of 7, he was greatly frightened by another. By the time he was destroyed, he managed to earn a mental illness. Jiang Yu proudly and complacently says that he would have dealt with him right away. Yaya irritably asks if he really thinks that everyone is the same as himself. She says seriously afterwards that most people would run away in a similar situation. Even if everything feels normal, others still haven't gone anywhere. There is an awkward silence. It was as if Jiang Yu wanted to say something serious, but then he just diffuses the situation by offering a drink. He wanted to say something else, raising his glass. However, the alarm system starts working abruptly. Yaya immediately says that this is the siren of the pollution sensor, which means that another has entered the shopping center. The siren starts to sound sharply. At first, people stand in disbelief. As soon as one of the people started shouting for everyone to run, panic and screams began. People started running to the exit and pushing each other. Someone shouts, "Let him pass, let him out." Someone swears at someone in front, asking if he really wants to die. Someone else in a panic shouts that the other is here. He is already here. While the 4 friends got up from the table, someone shouts to everyone to stop shouting and be calmer. Jiang Yu's friend says that there are too many people and that they can't get out. The girl with glasses is already crying and asking what they should do then. Yaya says that to begin with, in her opinion, it is necessary to remain calm and slowly move towards the exit. Suddenly, Jiang Yu knocks a hole in the wall with his bare hand and shouts that it should be done like this. Yaya looks at him in surprise and then blushes. Jiang Yu begins to help and regulate their movements. He calls and tells you to run in a certain direction. While the girls are trying to calm down the chubby guy, Jiang Yu looks around for another one. The creature comes straight out of the asphalt, big and red in color. Jiang Yu thinks to himself that there are too many people. If he reincarnates, then everyone will see him. He abruptly takes Yaya by the hand and pulls him to run among the crowd. Yaya says that there should be barriers near the shopping center, so where else would there be here? Jiang Yu replies to her that it's too late to talk about it. They just need to run. Fortunately, he was discovered more or less in time, in his opinion. Someone shouts to run faster, and that there is already an exit in front. However, a strong wind starts. Jiang Yu tells his friends to be careful and hold on to it. The building starts to collapse. They all fall down. They all fall down. Someone screams for help. Jiang Yu grabs his hips and says he's in pain. He asks the others if they are okay. Lu Yaya replies that she is fine. She only has scratches. Then their friend screams how it hurts him. His leg is clamped by a stone. The other 3 run to his aid. Jiang Yu tells him not to worry, because he will help him now. He lifts this huge piece of stone with iron inserts with ease. Lu Yaya runs up to them. My friend's leg is broken. It's bleeding. Jiang Yu throws the stone aside with a bang. Lu Yaya pours the pills out of the package and hands them to him to eat. She says it should help. He panics and asks what kind of place it is and why it has become so dark. Lu Yaya replies that she does not know, and that she has never been in such situations. Jiang Yu touches the ground and says that, in his opinion, they are on some floor of the shopping center, so we need to figure it out. Black smoke comes out of his hand, like a shadow. He tears it off with thoughts that this can't be, and that he has such a familiar feeling. He looks around and wonders if the entire floor has been dragged into the shadow layer. Other people are panicking too. Someone shouts that he hurt his leg. A little girl turns to her dad and says that she is scared. Some guy is all pinned down by a huge broken wall. Dad tells the girl not to be afraid, and that people from the night watch will come to rescue them soon. Jiang Yu sees it all and thinks there are too many people here. There are no means of transportation in the shadow layer, so it will take a long time for the night watch to get here. He thinks that if they stay here for a long time, they will fall under a decent amount of pollution if they don't get caught by others. He looks at his comrades and decides that he needs to get everyone out as soon as possible. He asks Lu Yao if she is not wearing the watch that uncle gave her. She looks at the clock with joy and says that she almost forgot about them. Their friends smile hopefully. Lu Yao says that this watch can transmit a signal for help, so the people from the night watch will come faster. Her friend says that thanks to Lu Yao, they are saved. Jiang Yu thinks to himself that he does not know how this can speed up the arrival of the detachment, but the watch is definitely capable of resisting pollution. He stands ready with the thoughts that the other can attack at any moment, so he should not lose his vigilance. Indeed, in a second, different silhouettes with dark magic come out of the ground. People are screaming in panic again that it's a monster. Jiang Yu is ready for the monster to come. Suddenly the earth starts shaking. They don't understand what's the matter. Jiang Yu is surprised by what he saw. All the structures collapse in front of him. Lu Yaya coughs up dust and smoke. She shouts the names of her friends, Xiao Xiao, Lu Yukang, Jiang Yu. Xiao Xiao comes out to her and says she's here. Yukang shouts to them, where are they? He doesn't see them. They're looking for Jiang Yu. Xiao Xiao sees something and asks Lu Yaya to look. There is a huge cliff in front of them. They think, after all, Jiang Yu could not have fallen through there. On the other side lies the girl with snow-white hair. She gets up and says that she is in pain. She doesn't understand what happened. She remembers running away with her friend Xiaoya, and then the alarm sounded, and everyone suddenly ran. She starts shouting her girlfriend's name and asking where she is. Suddenly she sees a bloody hand in front of her, and then the whole body is covered in blood and wounds. She starts shaking and crying because she realizes that this is her friend. She barely pronounces her name in shock. Right behind her, the other raises his hand to kill the girl. She turns to him and sees the monster's scary face. She wonders if she's going to die. Tears flow from her eyes. She reflects to herself that she would never have thought that she would get into the plot of one of the films. She freezes in place and thinks, because the hero comes to save the heroine from the movie at this time. In real life this is impossible. She has already come to terms with the fact that no one will save her. She closed her eyes with thoughts that there are no heroes in reality. The monster strikes, weapons are crossed. She opens her eyes and sees in front of her Yi, that is, Jiang Yu, activating his ability. She sighs, rubs her eyes from tears and sees how Jiang Yu with his bare hand prevented a monster strike. She says hopefully, is this really a hero? Jiang Yu pushes the monster away from him so that he falls down. The girl begins to recognize him and wants to say something. Then Jiang Yu activated the Shadow Claw, which acts together with the killer's ability, increasing the lethality from blows. In a split second, he disappears from this place and jumps right at the monster. He attacks. The monster keeps backing away. He stops himself with his blade-like hands and breathes heavily. The girl finally realizes and starts screaming. Is it really a dream? Is it really true? Hearts are flying from her eyes, and she squeezes her cheeks with her palms from a pleasant shock. She screams, gets up. Jiang Yu is surprised. She takes him by the hands and says that she is his fan. She watches his every video. She thinks what a handsome guy he is, and that she likes him. She turns around him, takes pictures, inhales the fragrance. Jiang Yu awkwardly tells her that her tights and dress are torn. She immediately feels shy and asks where he is looking. He awkwardly replies that this is not the case, and that he just decided to remind. Then she makes eyes and says that if Brother EU doesn't like it, she can run home and change into a new one. Jiang Yu is led to this and begins to blush. He asks if she really will do it and will even wear tights. She replies that, of course, she will do everything just for him. A monster stands between them and does not understand what is happening between them. He starts to get angry and growl. Jiang Yu with a serious face then tells her that now is not the time. His fan stands aside and continues to look at him. Jiang Yu announces that the hunt has now begun. His strength begins to increase. The monster now does not find Jiang Yu and looks around in search. Jiang Yu launches his web directly at the monster, clings to its head and pulls it sharply towards him. Jiang Yu wants to kill him right away, but the monster manages to dodge. Jiang Yu stops and sees that he still fell to the ground. Jiang Yu says that he has the strength and dexterity, otherwise he would already be dead. He abruptly pushes off and flies to the monster to try it again. Abruptly, he feels something and manages to put his hands forward to dodge the monster's blow. He breathes heavily and begins to tense up. Two more monsters like the first one come out in front of him. Jiang Yu says he's going to have a hard time. Behind him, that girl takes a video of him and wishes him good luck, shouting that if he wins, he will fulfill his wish. Jiang Yu is led to this, blushes and shouts that he will do everything for them. He jumps sharply and flies towards the monster with all confidence. Approaching him tightly enough, the monster swings and wants to strike, but Jiang Yu uses the thread and jumps up, dodging the blow. On the other side, another monster comes out. Jiang Yu realizes that he has risen in the air, and he did not foresee it. He releases the thread and binds the so-called claws of his enemy. He swings and swings his arm sharply, releasing blood from them. He turns around and asks if they really want to kill him. He is sure that he sees nothing. As soon as he says that, the third monster approaches and hits him right in the shoulder. He did not expect this. Blood gushes from his mouth. Jiang Yu immediately jumps away from the monster. He can't understand if the others have started working together, because according to his observations, two are holding back while one is attacking. He releases the thread again and thinks that if this continues, there will be no chance of winning, so he needs to come up with something. Suddenly, the monster begins to follow his thread with his eyes. He wonders in shock if he really noticed. Abruptly, all three monsters are coming at him with an attack from different sides. Jiang Yu is holding on with all his might and thinks that they are not letting him go into the shadows. His blood level drops first to 89% and then to 78%. It reaches a critical point, 45%. He thinks that it is impossible to continue in the same spirit. While he was restraining the attacks of two, he does not notice that the third is flying to him from behind and thinks that he needs to lure the enemies. The third monster hits him on the back. He falls forward. His blood level reaches up to 35%. Jiang Yu immediately uses the tag and starts the chase. He thinks that since the last battle, the duration of the mark has been extended by 3 seconds. During this time, the chosen target will stop thinking clearly because of fear. The countdown starts, 8 milliseconds, then 10, then 12. Jiang Yu is acting here. He jumps and immediately strikes one by one, reducing his blood level to 7%. The time has reached the number 022. The monster is tormented. Jiang Yu uses decapitation, after which the monster finally dies. The chase was a success. The shape of the shadow becomes more powerful. When using the ability, the consumption of shadow points decreases, since in the shadow layer the shadow absorbs the atmosphere. The speed of experience recovery and the set of shadow points increases. He uses recovery and heals a huge wound on his back. He turns to the other two and says it's their turn. Those two remaining monsters are on alert. Jiang Yu asks them what's the matter, didn't everything go well, why didn't they continue? With the help of recovery, his blood level begins to rise. Then he starts rapidly approaching them and says that if they do not attack, he will do it. Suddenly, a bright light appears between them. Jiang Yu stops abruptly and asks what it is, where the light comes from in the shadow layer. He freezes and thinks it's strange. He doesn't understand why he had a sudden desire to go there. Those two monsters start moving towards the light with growls. In the very light stands the commander of the Night Watch, Song Kingen, in the hands of an ever-burning torch, which after use emits a soft glow that scatters shadows. It can be used as a light source. There are other employees next to him. One of them directs his green light at Jiang Yu, who is standing all in nerves. Then he shouts sharply that he will do it himself. Then a monster flies behind Kinnan, trying to attack. He raises his index finger up and hits the monster. Jiang Yu is surprised that he destroys one other at a time. He wonders if this is really the power of the Night Watch. He believes that if he had hit him, he would have disappeared in the same second. He shakes hands with the Night Watch and says they came late because he almost lost. They ask him to apologize for the delay and ask if he is okay. He says that he is not so important. He asks them to take better care of that girl, pointing to his fangirl. She is indignant and asks if he wasn't going to bring her home. Jiang Yu replies that he was joking, and that the people from the Night Watch always put work first. He says that he leaves her for the Night Watch. They do not understand him and are surprised. Jiang Yu disappears into the shadows while the girl asks him to wait. The commander of the Night Watch asks if they have a Man Yu. His partner replies that this presenter is very famous on his platform, and that he uses the power of the shadow. He thinks that he is not particularly strong, and that he is somewhere on the first level. He is straining. What else is the first level? He has a torch in his hand, so where can shadows come from here? He is surprised that he disappeared in front of so many people. He doubts and asks again if he is exactly on the first level. His fan already lay down on the ground and began to get hysterical, sobbing loudly and pounding her fist on the ground. They decide that first they need to bring the girl home. The commander of the Night Watch says that then they should check the CU. The light from the torch illuminates everything around, casting their own shadows. At this time, among the corpses of Lu Yaya, Yao is looking for Jiang Yu with his watch, using it as a flashlight. She passes in horror and softly pronounces his name, asking where he is. She looks around cautiously, cowering in fear. She asks him to answer her. Her voice starts to tremble. She says that he couldn't have done it. Then Jiang Yu raises his hand and says that he is here. He renders under the stones and asks her to help him by building a pained face. He says he feels like he's about to be torn apart. Lu Yaya approaches him, asks him to be patient, and that she will now remove the stones. He keeps complaining and saying that he can't do it anymore and asks her to pull him out. She asks how he got here in the first place, because it was possible to die. Jiang Yu easily gets out and smiles suspiciously. Lu Yaya says with disappointment that these stones did not put pressure on him at all. He replies that he could get out himself, he just couldn't move. He looks at Jiang Yu's back and asks where such a wound came from. Is it also from a stone? He replies that he does not know, and suggests that it may well be from them. He thinks to himself that it's not from the stone, but someone else tried. Then he asks her where Feng Xiao and Lu Yaya are. She replies that the Night Watch came to the rescue, so they were taken away. He asks her if she really stayed to find him. She blushes, turns away and asks, and so what if something happens to him? How can she then look into Uncle Li's eyes? Jiang Yu is surprised, his eyes start to water. He comes up to her and hugs her, hugging her to him. She blushes at first, and then begins to swear. What is he doing? She demands to let her go, hitting him on the head with her fist. He says that he just saw huge others with blades, and that they were so ugly. He says how scared he is, so he asks her to stay like this for a while. She says she's going to kill him now. Then someone comes to them, shining a flashlight. This girl says she heard the screams and asks if he's okay. Lu Yaya immediately pushes Jiang Yu away and replies that everything is fine. The girl smiles and says it's great. She asks them to follow her, she will take them to the exit. Jiang Yu agrees. Suddenly Jiang Yu makes a sound. Lu Yaya turns to him irritably and asks what is the matter. He says with tears in his eyes that it's nothing. He thinks to himself that he has completely forgotten to absorb the others, and that now the shadow glasses do not belong to him. In the light of day, Jiang Yu is interrogated in the Night Watch. First they ask his name, he obediently answers. The table girl asks him his age. He replies that he is 18. The girl asks if he is really entering this year. He answers in the affirmative. She says that the consequences of this incident are not so great, but they are there. Jiang Yu does everything but listen to her words. She says that some needed psychological help, and that the duration of treatment will be about a month. This girl's name is Lai Yuan. She is a member of the Night Watch. She says that if you take a martial arts test during this period, the score will be lowered. He says that, in his opinion, everything is fine with him. He asks if it is necessary to conduct therapy. She says that the process of contamination can occur covertly. Sometimes it is too late to do anything, so treatment must be obtained without fail. He asks, that is, then he has about 10 days before the exam. She tells him not to worry, because in the past years there have also been a lot of similar situations, so the Night Watch has developed a special policy on this. She takes out paper and folders and says that the interested person can apply in advance. She says to contact the parents or guardians, let them sign everything. She informs that the preliminary testing is carried out during the night patrol. The results are also entered into the system. Everything is just like an exam. She points to the paper and says that the test equipment is also exactly the same, open and impartial. The Night Watch will guarantee safety in case of unforeseen situations. Jiang Yu tells her that his guardian is an uncle, and that he also works in the Night Watch. She says that then it simplifies everything. She asks him to tell his name. He begins to say that, it seems, he works in the main department of the 1st District, a civilian, and his name is Lai Zhengguo. The girl tenses up as soon as she hears his name. She asks his name several times and begins to blush, standing right next to him. He is surprised. She asks if he is sure that he is an ordinary civilian. He does not understand and asks if it is not so. He starts to panic and asks he wasn't fired because he didn't do anything. She replies that, of course not. Then she doesn't understand in what sense he didn't do anything. She gets up and says she will take him to him, so let him follow her. He obeys and follows her. They walk through a large hall. She points to the room and says to go there. He comes in and is surprised. So this is their headquarters. He thinks he looks unusual. Two members go and discuss whether he is not a member of the Night Watch. The second replies that multiple checks have been carried out, but they do not have a person with the name EU. Jiang Yu reacts sharply and freezes. The girl asks him what is the matter. He awkwardly scratches his head and says that it's nothing, and that he's here for the first time, so he worries a little. He thinks to himself that this is a problem, and that they have started checking on him. She tells him not to worry and to rest here for a while she goes to Inspector Li. They enter the room. He sits down at the table. Lu Yaya and Xiao are sitting at the table. He is surprised that they are here too. The girl with the snow-white hair is sitting next to them. Lu Yaya asks her if what she saw is true. She proudly replies that, of course, she saw, because he also saved her. Jiang Yu doesn't understand why she's here too. He thinks it's problematic. Lu Yaya notices that he has come and tells him to sit down next to her, and then turns to the girl and asks if she will continue the story about Yi. She says that she saw him fighting with 10 others at once, and that he looked very calm and relaxed, killed them all in an instant. She says that just at the moment when the others could no longer move, the Night Watch arrived, so Brother EU disappeared into the shadows, leaving his laurels. At this time, Jiang Yu says irritably to himself that it's not worth adding fuel to the fire. Then he sees the girl herself and is crazy about him. He thinks how beautiful her clothes are. Lu Yaya asks who this he is, because they said that he is not a member of the Night Watch. She replies that he is the same student as they are, in her opinion. Jiang Yu is tensing up. Lu Yaya asks, is it really a student? Where did such information come from? She replies that, of course, his words and actions, as well as her intuition, speak about this, and most importantly, he is simply in love with girls, especially if they are dressed like herself. She points her finger at Jiang Yu and says that he is like this brother. He gets even more tense and starts to worry. Lu Yaya gets angry and asks if he really wants to die with one hand on his head and the other swinging in his fist. Uncle Lu comes in here in a hurry and nervous. Lu Yaya turns around and calls Dad. He breathes heavily and asks if everything is okay. He heard that she got into the shadow layer. Lu Yaya pulls Jiang Yu's cheek and says that everything is fine and that he is fine too. Jiang Yu says he's only a little hungry. The father exhales and says that since everything is fine, let them follow him. In a separate office, Lu Yaya asks his father if the situation is serious this time. He replies that it is, of course, so. After all, this is the first time in history that an entire store has fallen into the shadow layer. The victims are still being counted, but it's good that they didn't suffer themselves. He says they should have been notified that because of this incident, a test for them would be conducted earlier. He starts using his bad habit out of nerves, which his daughter doesn't like. He then suggests briefly telling them about everything. The test is divided into two parts. The first, ability testing. The second, willpower testing. He says that aptitude testing is known as initial awakening. Candidates will resist contamination. In this test, the risks are quite low. Mainly there is a distribution of abilities based on characteristics. The object of the test for willpower will be their spiritual will. He says this test will be the key to whether they can become special. He says this with a serious face, folding his hands in front of him. Jiang Yu asks if the key to success is willpower, that is, the stronger the better. He replies that it is not necessary. He says that some people can tolerate pain even from a severed arm, but their qualifications will remain mediocre, while others only do what they fool around, but at the same time show their best side. He says that willpower lies not only in the ability to endure pain, but also in faith and goodness, resistance to evil thoughts, tolerance for pollution. In general, everything is quite difficult, in his opinion. Jiang Yu raises his hand and asks if these items affect willpower. He asks in what sense they influence, why he asks such a question. Lu Yaya says that, for example, someone's thoughts are occupied with girls. He awkwardly scratches his head and says that, it turns out, she is still angry. Lu Yaya's father says that there are several other factors, but these 3 points are the most common. And if these same 3 points are somehow distorted, and the heart is filled with negative emotions, then everything will go to waste. Jiang Yu is asked why this is so. He replies that evil thoughts will attract only evil. Negative emotions are also a kind of environmental pollution. And if all this accumulates for a long time, the pollution will eventually become immense. So if there are any negative emotions, it's time to release them. If they keep them in their hearts, it won't lead to anything good. Jiang Yu reflects that Lu Yaya is usually like that. Then he changes his mind and says that he needs to go and massage his legs to cleanse his soul. Lu Yaya looks at him with annoyance. Uncle Lu tells them to come back because testing will start in a while. Then he tells Jiang Yu that his Uncle Lai probably won't be back soon, so he signed all the documents for him. He accepts it and apologizes for the inconvenience. Lu Yaya's father tells them not to worry and go with the flow. Jiang Yu smiles and agrees with him. Lu Yaya looks at him excitedly and replies that she understood him. After a while, a girl with white hair says in the room, "Did they really come back?" They come in and approach the table with numerous chairs. Lu Yaya asks where the others are. She replies that they left with the workers. Lu Yaya asks her why she didn't leave. She replies that her parents are in business. They left town just a couple of days ago and have not returned yet. She has just finished chatting with them, so they will sign the papers remotely. Suddenly someone comes into the room and says that they are all here. Everyone turns around and sees Yukin being dragged by Xiao in a wheelchair. He says it's amazing. They sprayed some kind of remedy on his leg, and it stopped hurting. Jiang Yu asks a friend if he has an injury. Is he sure he wants to pass the test? Lu Yaya asks if nothing bothers him. He tells them not to worry, because he was told that it would not affect the results. Xiao tells them not to look at his cocky face because he literally just sobbed in the corner. He indignantly immediately says that he did not cry. Opens the elevator doors. A lot of teenagers come in with terrible moods and tear-stained faces. Jiang Yu doesn't understand why they are so depressed. Lu Yaya tells him that he can't understand them because they just want to live a peaceful life. Lu Yaya excitedly says that, however, after the test, most likely, they will begin to have a clear change. The girl who interrogated Jiang Yu says that everyone is assembled, so they will get down to business. She says that testing is divided into two parts, testing abilities and willpower. The aptitude test will be evaluated in terms of their development potential, destructive power, and ability to use it. Abilities are divided into low, medium, high, and highest. Willpower testing is aimed at identifying resistance to pollution. The following colors will be awarded: white, green, blue, purple, red, and orange. In previous years, level 1 abilities were not allowed to participate in the trial, but this year everyone should participate. The assessment of their ability to become special should be taken into account at all stages of the development of their strength. With sufficient willpower, they will have the ability to counterattack, but if their willpower is inferior to their abilities, they will be able to become civilian workers. She closes the folder and says that's it, then asks them to follow her. Everyone goes into the waiting room. The whole building is surrounded by glass. Jiang Yu puts his palm on the glass. Suddenly, the radio tells Feng Xiao to take the test. He tenses up and in a panic says that she is coming. She enters another room, tells her not to worry. She first looks uncertainly at her friends, and then says that she is already here. She enters the room and approaches an employee, next to whom something is covered with material. Everyone is watching them through the window. The worker removes the material from the thing. There is something similar to a crystal. A worker with glasses says they can start. They are all waiting for what will happen there. The lights suddenly turn off, which confuses everyone. One asks if it's necessary to turn off the electricity. Lu Yaya says it's like a test of willpower. Jiang Yu is tensing up. He thinks that he is already used to such darkness in the shadow layer. He sees a stone on Xiao's leg, so it also glows. She was blindfolded. Jiang Yu thinks that it looks like she has encountered something strong. He wonders if she will succeed. Suddenly they turn on the light again, which blinds everyone's eyes. Xiao comes out of the room. Lu Yaya immediately asks, well, is she finished there? She shakes her head and says that, unfortunately, she has no talent for willpower. She used to train a lot, but to no avail. Her friend with a broken leg indignantly asks, so she wanted to become special, and even trained. She screams with emotion that she trained, but nothing came of it. She asks if he is happy now. Then the next one is announced. This is Liu Yukang. He passes by and asks on the way not to be special. He doesn't need it. Xiao tells him not to worry, because he will not become one. He comes in, the light turns off again, then turns on, he comes back out. He haltingly tells them that he has passed. Xiao asks in shock what he said. She suffers because she wanted to, but nothing happened, and the guy suffers because he didn't want it, but he passed. Lu Yaya says they were just unlucky. Then they announce that Lu Yaya is next. She exhales, turns to Jiang Yu and says that she is going to the test with a smile. Inside the room, she is enveloped in red forces. Her crystal on her leg shines brightly. Jiang Yu sees this and thinks that Lu Yaya's stone has turned red, although others had it green. He remembers that willpower corresponds to 6 different ranks and colors, and red is the 5th rank. His eyes widen at the realization. Xiao asks her if he has passed. She replies that she has passed. Jiang Yu laughs and asks if she's tired and that it's hard for her to even breathe. She calmly tells him to go there and he will understand everything. She climbs up to her to hug and says, come on, why not motivate him somehow? She pushes him away and tells him to get off her. Jiang Yu is invited next. He waves his hand and goes to the test. Although Lu Yaya was angry a second ago, as soon as he leaves, she puts her hand on her heart and wishes him luck with a smile. Jiang Yu hears this and thanks her. He goes into the room. The employee asks his name. He confirms. He asks if he has awakened the ability. He replies that it is. He gives him some cone and asks for a drink. Then the employee in shock asks him if he has already woken up. He calmly replies that it is, because he said so. The employee points to the accessories and says that he won't ask much. He suggests that he just start testing his willpower. His eyes are blindfolded. This crystal is attached to his leg. The test begins. He sighs. The employee puts his hands on his shoulders and tells him not to be nervous and go ahead. He says that his abilities have awakened, so he will feel his consciousness separating from his body as he moves forward. He repeats to him not to worry and just go. He pushes him sharply. He loses his balance and feels as if there is no support under his feet. He feels like he's falling somewhere. He finds himself over some river. He looks at his hands and says it's amazing because he can't feel his body. Then he says he's still connected to him. He starts jumping on the water and shouting that it's cool and cool. In reality, he also jumps in different directions, surprising the employee. He is told not to jump, otherwise his trial will be interrupted. The latter awkwardly answers him that he understood him. He sees a huge crystal and asks if he really needs to run there. He thinks that all this is somehow too simple. He starts to run to the crystal, but he falls deeper into the water. He does not understand what is happening. He feels that the body is getting heavier and it becomes harder to breathe. He finds himself in the water and thinks that something is beginning to affect him. He recounts his feelings of despair, sadness, anger. Then he decides that this is not possible. He needs to resist these feelings. Uncle Lee suddenly appears before my eyes. He calls him by name. He is shocked to recognize him and asks where he is from. His uncle tells him that he is not special and that he will only hurt others if he continues. He runs away from him with the words that this is not so and that this is an illusion. He is not Uncle Lee. On the other hand, another Uncle Lee appears, who tells him to understand that he is not capable enough. Several clones of his uncle appear, who say that mountains and rivers are destroyed, others are rampaging everywhere. He himself understands this. They ask him if he can live a happy life, so why bother with such nonsense? One says that special ones are not about strength, but about will, and he, Jiang Yu. They point to a huge red monster and ask if he can definitely follow their example. A huge monster just attacks people. He is powerful and strong. Jiang Yu looks at all this, he sees numerous corpses and is horrified. Uncle Lee opens the lighter and says that this is the end of the special. He repeatedly asks if he really wants to be like them. Another one tells him not to deceive himself, because in fact he just wants to be the center of attention. Another one confirms this, saying that this is exactly the case. Another Uncle Lee laughs and says that just like countless teenagers dream of becoming superheroes, they seduce him, saying that you can stay in bed, no early rises, fun, female love. They say that he does not like it when the elders try to talk his teeth. He is a person who has his own thoughts and goals, or that he feels that he is destined for something more, and that he is different from others. Someone says his own words that he likes to be assertive, strive for more. He doesn't have so many abilities, but he craves a lot of everything. And that, in fact, he himself understands that there is nothing special about him. All this is just youthful maximalism. A light appears at the end of the shadow. This torch is held by some guy. Jiang Yu is said to understand that the dark side of this world is not a shadow layer at all. Even if he has a bright scorching sun over his head, there will always be something that he cannot see. Jiang Yu sits on his knees and looks at the guy who arrived. He is told that this will be the hidden world, and that there is nothing beautiful in it. It is not a fairy tale. Jiang Yu stretches out his hand to the guy, and he evaporates into red-green colors. The fire goes out with him. Other monsters appear. They tell him that this is a cataclysm, and that if he becomes special, he will have to reap the fruits of his decisions. Then they tell him that now they will return to the original question of whether he can become special. Jiang Yu doesn't respond. His facial expressions show anger. At this time, two employees are looking at him, one with green hair, who is Uncle Lu's secretary. She asks him, well, what's wrong with him? He replies that it's nothing. He was always beating around the bush. She says that this is normal. After all, not everyone will be able to bear the pollution that he got. He agrees and says that only people who have high resilience can advance. Jiang Yu keeps looking around in panic. The employee says that Jiang Yu's goals are not so clear to them. The girl turns and suddenly shouts at him to watch. She says he suddenly turned red. He is surprised and looks there. His leg, to which the crystal is glued, is covered with red. The crystal itself, standing next to the size of a whole person, begins to burn brightly red. They do not understand and think that this cannot be. Something is happening to the stone. They think he should have a 5th rank, but it doesn't really look like it. The girl with a smile says that it can be the 6th rank. He replies that he does not know. After all, for several decades only a few people have reached the 6th rank. Jiang Yu clenches his fists and moves around. The workers notice that the light is beginning to fade and do not understand what is the matter. He shouts to the girl to check his watch for deviations faster. The girl answers him that there is nothing like that, and all indicators are normal. Jiang Yu takes another step towards the crystal. The worker is surprised and exclaims to himself that this is impossible. The closer he comes, the more powerful the willpower. He keeps coming closer. The employee notices that his willpower is weakening. He assumes something. At this time, Jiang Yu comes close and stretches out his hand to the crystal. The employee does not understand and asks if this is really a joke. Does he really want to touch? The girl covers her mouth in shock. The employee says that even a person with the willpower of the 6th rank is not capable of this. Jiang Yu comes close and puts his palm on the crystal. The color changes to gold. Jiang Yu is still in another dimension at this time. listening to how he doesn't need to become special. He is told to think about himself and his friends. Silhouettes of his friends pop up in front of him, and then he sees Lu Yaya herself as a dear person. He sees Lu Yaya holding out his hand to him with a smile. He shakes her hand. He is told to make his choice. He is surprised, and then seriously and confidently says that this is enough. The image of Lu Yaya collapses. In front of him, a huge crystal just splits into pieces. He says to stop the chattering in his ears already. He smiles and asks if this is some kind of temptation. Maybe he will already give in. On the test, he approaches an imaginary Uncle Lee and says that, to be honest, he was caught off guard at the beginning. He even thought about it. He says calmly that, however, initially he just wanted to look like a hero in the faces of others, and he didn't care about the rest. Then he seriously says that there were no supermen in this world, only ordinary people who were able to succeed. He points to the guy with the torch and says that it was their dedication to their work that brought the world to a stable place. He stretches out his hand and says that he has already enjoyed peace once. He takes the torch from the guy's hand into his own and raises it with the words that he no longer wants to hide behind the backs of others. His torch illuminates everything around much brighter. He declares to everyone that he wants to light his own flame. Uncle Lee stands in shock. Jiang Yu says he wants to light up the darkness. At this time, the workers give Uncle Lu a report that the incident with the shadow layer affected the second, third, and fourth floors of the shopping center. The fifth floor, although not completely, was also affected. He adds that about 850 people were involved. Among them, about 700 were trapped in the shadow layer, more than 650 were rescued, but the search is still ongoing. 30 students are going to take part in the exam. Several groups have been selected, and a contamination check will be carried out. Lu asks the other what the pollution department says. He is told that the results are ready. A report has been sent to him. He opens a message on his computer and voices the result. This is a shadow species, whose code name sounds like a wandering spirit. Its pollution level is the first. He is told that the three spirits are very similar in terms of morphology, bones and tissues, and traces of human product have also been found. Lee immediately tenses up. Another employee starts shouting that this is impossible, because everyone has their own individual traits. During mutation they are very modified, and these traits could not be distributed immediately among three others. Lee gets up and goes to the window to relieve stress. He says it looks like something is going on in Beidou. He says that some creatures hiding in the dark can no longer sit still. Suddenly, a bright light lights up right in front of him, which shocks him. He drops everything from his hand and is surprised to realize that there is a test room there. Lu hurriedly goes to the test room, asking everyone to let him pass. He apologizes and asks to be allowed to pass. He thinks to himself that the best result of the willpower test is orange light. Gold was never out of the question. He wonders what happened. He enters the test room, opens the door and sees a crowd watching the situation in shock. Workers approach him in shock and excitement. The girl calls the name Jiang Yu. As soon as Lu sees what's going on, his face darkens. He sees Jiang Yu touching a crystal that radiates golden light. Jiang Yu opens his eyes and turns to the side. He sees surprised people and does not understand what is happening. A little later, when he is sitting on the couch, Lu brings him a bottle of water. He tells him to drink water. He thanks him. Jiang Yu asks what about Lu Yaya and the others. He replies that while he was being tested, they were in the restroom. He thinks they shouldn't know about what happened. Lu tells him that he surprised him very much, because the 5th level is very good, not to mention the 6th, and he created the golden light at all. He is proud of it, drinks water from a bottle and asks, it turns out, his golden light is legendary. Is he better than the 6th rank? He replies that it may well be, but it's hard to say for sure yet. Then he adds that, perhaps, such are dissected and studied. He already presses water and coughs from shock. He asks again and asks Uncle Lee not to scare him. He asks if it really scares him, because there is nothing like that here. He seriously tells him that he needs to be studied, and someone will definitely take it up. Information about him has been sent to the Analytical Center for study, so that he becomes an object of observation. He does not believe and asks if everything is so troublesome. He replies that everything is fine. He will accompany him. You just need to go through a couple of procedures. He stands up and puts his hand on his shoulder. Jiang Yu is silent. He smiles and says it's a great opportunity. 3 members of the Night Watch interrogate Xiao Zhang, his name, age, and free time. He replies that his name is Jiang Yu. He is 18 years old. In his free time he reads and does sports. A lot of people from the headquarters are watching this. 2 guys are talking about whether this is the same guy who created the golden light. One of them says that the golden light does not mean genius, maybe it's some kind of errors in the system. Jiang Yu is asked what he saw during the willpower test, while the men are watching them through a laptop, saying that it looks like something great is coming. Xiao Yu tells them that he saw the battle with the other, thinking to himself, what a bore, why should he be there at all if Uncle Lu has prepared everything for him? Uncle Lu asks when he saw them what he thought. He says that he was excited, thought that he would become special, felt responsible on his shoulders. At the last words, the guy stops and Lu asks him to continue. The guy, grinning, asks the man if he has a map on the wall, and he says in surprise that yes, it is. Getting up on a chair, he explains that only 5 of their 10 seats have been preserved. He thinks that they are in a rather difficult situation. Everything is not so simple and it is urgent to find out the truth. The confused man does not understand what kind of game Jiang Yu has arranged, what he is doing at all. And he, in turn, continues to talk about how he saw people, and in that world they suddenly became cold, then hot. He tried to do everything possible to light the torch. He gestures very actively in front of them, and after it failed to do so, Jiang Yu became the only source of light. He says this with his hands in the air. There is an awkward silence. At this scene, Uncle Lu, ashamed, covers his face with his hands and apologizes for the guy, saying that he sometimes likes to fool around. But when he looks at his comrades, he sees that they are touched by Jiang Yu's story. They did not even expect this, and they think that a happy future awaits him in the night watch. He is told that it is not surprising that he created a golden light. Maybe it was an epiphany. Everyone understands and looks with admiration at the guy, saying that the guy is very talented, and they are not his equal. The guy is looking at him through the laptop, smile and warmly accept him. Jiang Yu thinks that very soon he should be allowed to go home, because he wants to go for a massage again. They really let him go, saying that he should wait for notification about a special training camp. He does not understand and asks what other notification. Uncle Lu closes the laptop and says it's about a special training camp. Xiao Jiang is sitting on the roof in his shadow form, remembering the conversation he had with Uncle Lu. They're looking down. Jiang Yu and Uncle Lu leave the night watch headquarters. Lu tells the guy, didn't he ask him to keep his head down? Now everyone in the night watch knows about him. He apologizes for the inconvenience provided to them. Uncle Lu sighs and says he doesn't know what he's going to say to Uncle Lai. He wouldn't want Jiang Yu to become special and will most likely get angry. He understands that nothing can change anyway, so he asks Xiao Yu to come back and not forget to come to the training camp on March 25th. He asks again which training camp. Lu explains that people like him will undergo special training for several months, and after completing the training, he must pass a martial arts exam. The departing Lu throws after him, shouting that he should not mention what happened at Lu Yaya when he returns, and remember about March 25th. He leaves with the phone to his ear. He sees that he has 20 days left to live, and understands that his few months, starting from the next one, will fall out of life, and he needs to prepare for this. He says he should hunt as much as possible to prolong his life. He resolutely stands up and decides to act. Walking, he notices something and sees a wounded other, whose blood level is only 27%, and realizes what a great opportunity this is. He takes off and runs to this monster. With the help of walking in the shadow, he can move on any surface. The monster notices that someone is chasing him, immediately marking the other, which confuses the monster. He uses a chase, and then decapitation, killing the other immediately. This is a seriously wounded other, and he fled, trying to save his life. He did not expect more, but his life was cut short, and he will not be able to face tomorrow anymore. Xiao Yu is informed that the pursuit of the wounded prey was successful. The remaining life is increased by 2 days. Combat skills have improved, and +4 shadow points. Jiang Yu says that, fortunately, he noticed it in time. Behind him, he hears a man shouting at him. He turns around in disbelief, not understanding who he is. He points to him and asks where his other is. Jiang Yu sighs because he has already been swallowed up. That guy is indignant and shouts, calling Jing Yu a thief and that he will pay him. This guy is wearing a helmet and holding a bat in his hand. He does not understand why he is a thief. He runs to him with an attack and shouts to stop pretending already, because he stole what belonged to him. Jiang Yu stiffens and sighs, not knowing what to do. The guy sees something and abruptly stops right in front of him. He takes off his helmet and begins to stare at it intently. He blushes and asks what he is doing at all. He smiles and shouts that he is the same EU, and that he saw him online. He is his fan and watches every broadcast of it. He takes out his phone, opens the camera and tells him to smile and say cheese. He stands in a stupor while the guy tells him that it was necessary to divide the loot according to the rules. Jiang Yu doesn't understand and asks what other rules. He freezes at first, and then starts shouting that the streamer EU stole the loot from a harmless collector and did not even apologize. Jiang Yu shouts at him to wait and asks what he is doing. How could he know about it? He tries to escape by shooting this video, but Jiang Yu releases the thread and catches him. The guy falls on his back in front of him and groans in pain. Jiang Yu demands from him to explain everything normally, grabbing him with his huge palm. He gets up and says that he listens to him. He tells them that they are freelancers of the Night Watch. Once they reach the first rank of the middle level, he will be able to join them. Jiang Yu asks him what the freelancers are doing. He replies that they do not earn much, about 6-7,000 yuan. Jiang Yu is surprised that he calls it a little earnings. Xiao Jiang is outraged that he himself receives much less than 7, which is almost his monthly fee for manuscripts. The man says he understands, but they have too many risks, they rely only on themselves and can die at any moment. And this is just a battered other in the shadow layer. Jiang Yu asks to whom he sells these others. The man replies that, of course, to the Night Watch, universities and some companies with suitable qualifications. They give a task to capture a certain species, and besides, they send information about its location. It is quite convenient to report the location of the other, according to Jiang Yu, and Jiang Yu asks the guy to share his code with him. He persuades him, saying that this is in order to go back and add him, and besides, he will give 7,000 yuan for another one. The surprised man does not understand. Is it really all 7,000? He says that 4,900 is enough in principle. But Jiang Yu asks how it is. He can't be so petty. The guy is already sweating and nervous. And besides, the guy wants to chat with him about further cooperation, and he hesitantly asks what kind of cooperation is in question. Jiang Yu fights Shadow's blood cat, and using Shadow's bite, defeats him by stretching his arm up and piercing through his body. He thinks he should try to absorb it, but leave the body untouched, otherwise he won't be able to sell it. Xiao Yu tells the guy to take the loot. He agrees with a smile and calls Jiang Yu such a kind person, because he is even ready to share. Jiang Yu says that after all, he also has quite a responsible job. You need to find out about the location. Take the body to the Night Watch. But he says that, in principle, this work can be done by one if you register. And Jiang Yu is tense and says that he wants to maintain confidentiality. He thinks to himself what will happen if the people from the Night Watch find out about his identity. A man praises his brother because he killed 4 others in a day. This is a record. A little complacently, blushing and smiling, Jiang Yu says that he would kill 100 if there was time. He understands that the others he has just absorbed have not made him stronger, so he thinks that others with the first rank will suit him better. Jiang Yu asks Dank to help him tomorrow in the search for others of the first rank. And the frightened and surprised one tells his brother that this is impossible. He cautiously says that they are all extremely dangerous and the risks are too high. Jiang Yu smiles and says that he knows this and is going to deal with them anyway. Xiao Jiang is finally coming home. He talks about it tiredly, barely moving around the room. Lu Yaya shouts to him that he came back late again. She had been waiting for him for so long. He lies on the couch and digs into his phone, chewing cookies. She says there are cookies on the table, and she baked it herself. She suggests he try it. The guy eats cookies and asks where Uncle Lu is missing. She says that he is on a mission, and answering Xiao Yu's counter question whether he will return today, she says that he will not return today. She asks what it is. Then the guy offers her to stay with him today, for which he gets a blow on the head from an indignant girl. She says there was no time to ask about how the test went, so she's asking about it now. Xiao Yu replies with a bump on his head that everything is successful. He asks what is the matter then. Then she asks what level and what ability. The guy lies to her, saying that he has the 3rd level, because she should not say that he is golden. She asks what about his abilities, what kind of abilities he has. He answers, well, the ability is a shadow. Perhaps she has heard about this. Lu Yaya exhales, saying that everything seems to be pretty good. He has good potential. And the ability is auxiliary, so he shouldn't get into trouble, in her opinion. Jiang Yu, a little touched, thinks that Lu Yaya was so worried about him. That's why she waited so long. The guy asks about her abilities. She smiles, proudly saying that her spirit ability is rated as the strongest and having the highest potential. At an early stage, the combat power is not particularly strong, but at a later stage it is a completely different matter. Then Jiang Yu realizes that she probably just came to show off. He gives her a funny snap with words so that she does not throw words to the wind, and she tells him to shut up, covering his mouth with her palm. By the way, he asks her that they are both now Shadowman and Guardian of the Soul. The girl replies that she doesn't quite understand either, she only knows that others have the same names. For example, his shadow corresponds to the shadow of another, and her guardian of the soul corresponds to the spirit of another. She explains to him that it is necessary to hunt others, but at the same time not to be polluted, in order to become stronger. If he hunts a suitable other, the effectiveness of development increases. Jiang Yu says that it's interesting, and that her skill also sounds good, and why shouldn't she demonstrate her abilities? But the girl doesn't understand how to do it if there are no others here. And then the guy tells her that she can experience it on him. He tells her not to worry, and that everything will be fine. She shouts indignantly, but what is he offering her? She stretches out her hand to him, a large blue energy gathers near her hand. She blushes, extending her hand further and further. At some point, Jiang Yu feels that he has been pierced through. He falls on his back. She excitedly gets up and asks him if he is okay. He says he's in pain. Then he lies down on her stomach and asks him to stroke her faster. He gets scared and agrees, after which he puts his palms on his head. She asks if this is what he wants. He says that it is not so and asks her to try from both sides and more gently. She listens and asks if he wants it that way. He enjoys it and says that it is and that it's fine. Then he tells her that she is strong. He was ready to defend himself, but still fell into her trap. She says that their abilities come from different others. It's normal that he couldn't resist. Moreover, the spirit attacked sharply. No wonder he didn't even notice. He asks her if she has thought about him becoming a target for everyone while they are in training camp. She replies that she is not like him, and she likes assertiveness. She has heard that there will be other strong students from the district. He asks her what levels they will have. She tells him not to worry, because they will obviously not be much stronger. Then she says he loves massage. She wonders how much he would pay some masseuse. He replies that he can't even imagine. He assumes that there may be several thousand. There is silence. Lu Yaya smiles slyly. Jiang Yu tenses from the realization that he has fallen into a trap. Lu Yaya asks if he likes massage. He walks away in a panic and tells her not to approach him. He shouts, asking for help. In the shadow layer, a huge red monster absorbs the soul of another monster. Jiang Yu and Denk are watching him. Jiang Yu asks if this is a first-rank other. He replies that yes, and that he specifically chose the one he has already encountered. Jiang Yu jumps down to him. Denk asks him if he needs help. He replies that he does not need it. Not having time for Jiang Yu, is surprised that he is fast. Jiang Yu lands and punches the monster, piercing it through with his hand. The system notifies that the chase was successful. Jiang Yu looks at his palm and smiles. The system notifies that his shadow threads have been improved. A new shadow group ability has appeared. His shadow control ability has been improved several times. Now he can expand it. Denk is surprised and shouts that wow. He thinks Brother Yu is so strong. A man with glasses is looking down. The energy of electricity is coming from him. Under him are numerous monsters that growl at him. Lu Yaya looks at this battle through the computer and says that it looks so powerful. Uncle Lu tells her that not all the special ones can awaken the ability that she possesses, and this is very impressive. She turns to her father. He says that there used to be a person who had already awakened a similar ability to her. Writing on a flash drive is an early stage of his cultivation. He tells her that it is worth paying special attention to this. Lu Yaya asks his dad, and he hasn't achieved anything like that. He replies that he did not achieve it, but Uncle Lee did it, and he knows such generals, is well acquainted with them. Lu Yaya thinks to himself that this is strange. Won't this information be useful for Jiang Yu? Why is he showing it to her? Uncle Lee goes to the window and looks out into the street. He's still thinking. There is a piece of classified information on his desk. Room B 14256. The cataclysm happened 90 years ago, to the west of Beidou, 200 kilometers from here. The body was surrounded by a glowing ring, which hung in the air. If you don't look at it for a long time, then you begin to sink into pollution. 2 divisions were completely destroyed during the battle. 3 generals were seriously wounded. 300 members of the Night Watch were injured. They were successfully taken away, after which they began to be held in custody. The dossier of each is top secret. After careful analysis, it was found that prolonged contact with that creature is not worth having. The code name of this creature is God. At this time, in the shadow layer, Jiang Yu is fighting a monster. He uses his abilities, which hits right into the chest of the other. The monster punches Jiang Yu in the face so that he turns away in the direction of the blow. At this time, Denk is filming it all on camera. He wishes him luck. His blood level dropped to 66% from one such blow to another. He sees that the monster is rushing towards him. He decides it's time by sticking a stick in his mouth. This is a cookie, which he first breaks off and emits something similar to the sound of an explosion. The monster tenses up. The next second the other's hand flies in one direction, and his whole body really explodes. The Jiangyu system says that the shadow group produces small explosions in a certain area, either in the air or on the enemy's body. There is also a chance to penetrate deep into the enemy's body, then the damage will be enormous. Dank watches a video of Jiangyu blowing up a monster and says that he is good and that it turned out great. He says it was cool. In his opinion, this part of the video will make a splash. Jiangyu agrees with him and says that it was shot well. After a while, Dank collects the remnants of the other from the ground while Jiangyu checks something in the system. He sees that he has 47 days left to live. He says it's great, and that now you don't have to worry about training camp. He tells Dank to prepare the next one for him, who tells him that everything is ready. This is a huge monster consisting of one eye and limbs. The monster directs some kind of bullets at him. Jiangyu immediately notices this, so he takes Dank by the collar and pulls him in the other direction, saving him from being hit. Jiangyu asks him who it is. The latter hides behind his back and looks excitedly. Sweat is flowing from his face. Out of the smoke and dust comes a huge purple monster, and his whole eye is blue with a red pupil, similar to a cat's eye. Dank shouts that he is big-eyed and that he has the second rank. Jiangyu doesn't understand if it's a spirit. He remembers Lu Yaya's words that her soul guardian corresponds to the spirit of the other. He gets tense at first. Then he rushes from his place and flies straight to him with the thoughts that he should not be allowed to attack. While the monster is preparing its attack again, and Jiangyu is flying towards it, a golden light is flying from above, which hits this other through and through. The monster immediately falls. Jiangyu stops. At this time, a man with a golden stick lands on the monster itself. He's wearing some kind of superhero costume. Jiangyu looks at him and wants to guess who he is. However, this hero jumps and flies back away, surprising Jiangyu. After this person, there remains a piece of paper with patterns. He opens the paper and reads the inscriptions. There are questions written there. Is he not worried enough about his exams? Does he still want to become special in the family and stand out? At the bottom it says that the Chuan group invites him to their place. He does not understand what kind of group Chuan is. Meanwhile, a crowd of people is gathering in Chuan's office in a huge building with a superhero statue in front of it. Among them stands Jiangyu himself and examines the rear ones. He looks at the piece of paper and remembers what happened then. Dank told him that Chuan is the largest pharmaceutical company in Yunhai. If he becomes their employee, there will be nothing more to worry about, so his future will be secured. Jiangyu then asked him if this person was an employee of Chuan. He replies with a smile that it is, and it was evident from his uniform. Jiangyu says that he said that people like him are at the first rank, and this one is not straining to deal with another of the second rank. Dank asks him if he didn't know that the Chuan make dope that increases their abilities. He says that they cooperate with the Night Watch, and that they helped in the development of one tool. He tells Jiangyu that if he wants to become strong in the shortest possible time, then Chuan is the best solution for him. Jiangyu asks Dank what about him. He tells him to forget because he is on his own. A presentation of a new product is held in one room. The employee says that the new drug, codenamed T1928, was developed by a doctor from Beidou and Mr. 30, who has been heading the company for 10 years. She says that the drug helps to increase brain activity, thereby accelerating the development of abilities. Jiangyu looks dispassionately and thinks that it sounds tempting. But does this drug work? The presenter asks a volunteer to come on stage. Someone raises his hand and shouts that he will go. All the guys stand with Spanish shame. It's Dank who comes on stage and drinks the whole drug in one gulp. Jiangyu thinks, didn't he say that by himself? Dank shouts that he feels like the brain is working. Rays are already coming out of his eyes. The girl says that the initial price is 88 yuan, but today they have a special offer in which the price is reduced to 1888 yuan. People shout and raise their hands, asking to give them one. Someone shouts that they also want one. Jiangyu stands and thinks that there is no help for them. He looks at all sorts of artifacts located in the glass. He sees a picture that depicts all sorts of heroes. At the bottom it says that this painting is dedicated to the founder Zhao Chuan. He omits the man in the painting and wonders if he was really a member of the Night Watch. Some guy comes up to him and says that's right. Jiangyu turns to the guy. He says that, unfortunately, few people remember this now. Jiangyu thinks to himself that this is the man from the Night Watch. The story is voiced that in the 50th year of the catastrophe, others completely penetrated into Daju. Mr. Zhao Chuan single-handedly decided to fight this seemingly hopeless situation and led a mass evacuation from the occupied territory. In order to protect people, he did not hesitate to set himself on fire to destroy all others and eventually burn to the ground, leaving not even bones behind. The man says that, fortunately, his descendants have increased the number of the Chuan company, continuing to make a huge contribution to the cause. The red-haired man says that, to be honest, he looks a lot like Mr. Zhao Chuan. He awkwardly asks again, is it really him? He replies that yes, and that on that day in the night watch department he said that he wanted to become the only light in the pitch darkness, whether he remembers it. He is surprised, and then awkwardly replies that he really said it, and he thinks to himself that he just blurted it out, and he believed him. That man tells him that he is worthy to be a relative of General Li. He asks again what other General Li is. He replies that General Li is Li Zhenguang. He is surprised and asks if he is a general, remembering all his shameful and cowardly moments. Jiang Yu can't believe he's the strongest. They ask him if they didn't tell him about it. He replies that they didn't, and he generally thought that he was a simple worker. He says that he is also a representative of the citizens, but his power is much higher than their power. Jiang Yu falls silent. He thinks that now his words about another way out don't seem strange to him, and he thought that he knew some cool people. It turns out that he himself is a cool person. The guy tells him that it looks like General Li is watching him surreptitiously for his own good. He introduces himself. His name is Song Kingan, and he is an instructor at a training camp. He asks if that instructor really is. Kinnan wishes him good luck and says that he likes him. He hopes that their training will go smoothly. He sighs. Kinnan leaves. He is left alone and thinks that he has some kind of bad feeling about training. He sharply feels that the energy of the other is coming from the picture. He turns sharply, trying to find it. He carefully examines the painting, and then sees that a different green color really comes from the painting. He screams in disbelief. Jiang Yu starts chasing the monster. He thinks to himself that it's a wandering spirit. He can't figure out how he got here. He goes down the stairs and wonders how he got inside when there are so many guards outside. The monster is rapidly flying down. It looks like a large centipede. Jiang Yu thinks he's not that simple. The wandering spirit he killed the first time also had this clue pop up. He understands that, it turns out, something is wrong here. He keeps chasing the spirit. It turns the corner. Jiang Yu speculates, maybe the frequent appearance of others in their world has something to do with it. He turns behind the monster, but is surprised because he doesn't see anything in the corridor. He freezes in place. He understands that this is the basement of the Chuan company, but does not understand why there is no one here. The monster's energy is still blowing. Suddenly he hears a voice saying that number 9 has returned, so let him come in. He asks if there really is someone. He turns around. Silence again. No one is there. He thinks maybe he should hide in the shadow layer. He doesn't understand what's wrong with this company. He uses the pupil of the shadow and turns completely into a shadow. He easily goes in a certain direction. He stops abruptly because he sees something shocking. He sees a lot of large glass barriers in which many monsters of various kinds are placed. He looks at them and is horrified as soon as he realizes that they are all different. He wonders what Chuan is doing with them. He looks closely and sees 2 people in a bathrobe walking. One of them is younger and wearing glasses, and the other is an old man. The guy calls the old man Dr. Wu and says that the cultivation of the wandering spirit is going as expected, so everything is fine. He adds that in the morning Mr. Zhao said he would like to take control of the bloody view. He asks Dr. Wu if he has any ideas. The old man replies that in the end, others are quite difficult to tame. 3 wandering spirits have become an excellent example of this. If they forcibly capture the bloody species, he is afraid that they will lose many. Another asks him if the previous use of flesh and blood to attract a bloody species has not borne fruit. Dr. Wu replies that no, because it is impossible to rely on it completely. Jiang Yu attentively watches and listens to them. Dr. Wu says that their main goal is to develop a controlled other that will help the night watch. And to achieve this, you first need to take control of the spirit. He adds, pointing to a certain monster, saying that this spirit ended up in their hands after being rejected by his own. Jiang Yu comes out right next to them and looks at everything in shock. Dr. Wu approaches one of the monsters and greets him, calling him number 9. The monster does not react in any way. His assistant asks Dr. Wu to be careful. He tells him not to worry and just take notes. Dr. Wu taps his hand lightly on the glass and asks how he feels and if he likes his new eyes. The monster begins to move, and then pulls his hand forward. Dr. Wu says it's great and that his mood is stabilizing. He also informs that the next step is to make more ninth numbers that could fight with others. Dr. Wu turns to the assistant and tells him to quickly bring some stones and give them to the ninth. He obeys and leaves. Jiang Yu is still following all this. The monster's gaze is fixed on him. He wonders if he sees him. He is still hiding and says that he does not look like the wandering spirit he encountered earlier, is not aggressive, and even communicates. He suggests that this monster seems to have consciousness. The assistant asks Dr. Wu if everything continues in the same spirit, if he will not get out of control and fight against them. He replies that he believes that they will solve all the problems that have arisen. The assistant suggests trying to conduct further testing. Dr. Wu asks which ones. He replies that, for example, to try to replace the soul of another with a human one. Dr. Wu shouts and says that this is nonsense because it goes beyond all limits of what is allowed. He takes him by the collar, calls him Tianming, and advises him to give up this idea, otherwise he starts coughing loudly. Tianming apologizes to him and says that he blurted out too much, so let him not worry so much. Putting his palm on his shoulder, he keeps coughing during breaks, saying that you can't even think about such a thing, because it's taboo. Suddenly, blood starts to flow from the doctor's mouth. He is in shock, his eyes open wide. A little away from Tianming, he realizes that he has a dagger in his stomach. He is bleeding in horror. He looks hatefully at his partner, who says that the people, the night watch. He apologizes to the doctor, but this is the end of his research. He takes off his glasses and says menacingly that he has come for something else. Tianming raises his hand and draws the dark forces to him. His eyes begin to burn. He clenches his fist and turns all the force into destructive power, breaking the whole lab like a madman. His powers fly straight to the monster at number 9. He comes out of the water and is released. The alarm goes off. Everyone is warned that there was a winner from room 35, and the threat level is red. The monster lands, followed by other types of monsters begin to gather and move. The alarm system shouts to the researchers to evacuate as soon as possible. The light is burning red. All scientists freeze in place in fear. They panic and shout that there are dozens of others in the 35th room. They call each other to run faster to a safe place. One does not understand why they froze and run away. Above, Tianming is standing on the stairs and looks at them with pleasure. One of them shouts in panic that he can't walk and asks for help. Tianming himself falls back with a smile with swollen veins on his face. His blood level has reached 0%. Jiang Yu sees all this and reflects that the student killed the teacher and then ended his life with a smile. What is going on here? He turns around and realizes that all the wandering spirits have escaped. Suddenly, Dr. Wu with a heavy voice says that he has come. He approaches him and tells him not to move, and he will call a doctor. Jiang Yu lifts Dr. Wu's head by the head and arm. Dr. Wu keeps saying he's a fiery species. Jiang Yu does not understand and asks again what kind of fiery look. Dr. Wu is suffering in his last breaths. His eyes roll up and then completely close. Jiang Yu shouts at him to wait. What does this mean? Let him explain first. He shouts at him not to play such games with him. The doctor does not wake up. Jiang Yu turns around and sees that monster number 9 with 3 faces on his head. Jiang Yu stands up and says that it looks like all the interference needs to be eliminated first. He prepares to attack and says that he will kill him first, and then continue the conversation.